Burning ram.
Oh, that's a ram.
Ram. They broke it. Give them one.
Right.
Two on.
Nice. At the block. I have 1-2. No wall, you need 3. Yeah, 1. Big pen. Go.
Dude,
Careful with it. Bash. Yeah, hold shit.
just make sure they don't push cart away from us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, they're off Widow right now, but careful the Hanzo. They have Hanzo.
Yeah, he's trying to peek this door. I'm marking him.
Okay. Into your Sonic.
Oh, is that right side? Come right. It's Ram.
Ram down. No. Ram down. No, chill. Do it.
I have 1-2.
They're down turret. We should go. It's our turn.
Come on.
Go.
Ram. Back one.
There's gonna be a Hanzo trying to flick us. Nope, never mind, he went to spawn.
Okay, we chill. We need to go heal.
Oh shit, my god.
Don't wait. We die card. We fight card.
We win.
Yeah, we do.
Ram behind.
Oh, dead. Oh, there's one. Yeah, we won. I mean, it was good.
Yeah, that was great.
Ready?
Bash on card.
Whenever you're ready, 2, 1, let's go.
Bash your gun.
I had to rotate out. I'm out for a second. I'm coming back for Bastion. Bastion cart.
Ram's going.
How is he flying?
Wait, how did...
What happened to my shatter?
Kill.
Kill
Ram. You kill him.
Kill myself. I have no cooldown.
Oh, we didn't.
Dude, there's no way. I don't have form for a bit. I'm dead.
Oh.
Oh, so close.
I got scammed. I actually got scammed.
I'll take the blame, team. My fault.
No, I'm
There we
100%
go.
serious. A shield was behind me fully. I couldn't see it. It was on my screen and it blocked my shatter.
That is shit.
What? Scam. And it made Bastion fly.
I would have killed the Bastion. It would have killed him. Does anyone have a clip of that? Dude, ain't no fucking way. Back for Bastion. Bastion cart.
Well, I was gonna ask how tanking was, but
Oof.
I know what it is. It's the shield behind me. There's a shield behind me that gets placed. You can see it right here in the kill cam. It's fucking behind me. I can't even see it. This isn't even on my screen. My whole body except my back toe is through it. Like, what? This is the in real time thing. This isn't even replay viewer. Let's go replay viewer. I don't even know if I'm gonna have time.
hammer down.
That blocks it. That
It's my
right there.
birthday. Was
That
your birthday?
that blocks
Because
shatter.
every day is
That right there.
birthday.
That blocks it. Really. That's impact. My fucking right ankle. My right ankle is in a shield.
Hammer down.
I meant
Glacier
to
is a
reset
back
for that
by
one.
the way. I think he asked you for a mirror. Like, he only plays right now, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I was still mauling over the clip. Ryan's feeding. Oh, I'm dead.
Oh, I was about to break that one.
I'll take his mirror.
Right one. Breaking one. Up one.
I'm one.
Nice, thank you.
Come on,
We win.
I'm ready whenever we win one.
He jumped it.
That Ryan shatter block was crazy.
I think I just missed the bat. He just jumped over it.
No, that should have hit the bat for sure.
Oh, man. Oh, that's a good thing.
Spike goes drop. I can blade too.
Blocked it.
Come on, Bab. Bab dead.
Thank you. Nice block.
Soldier one.
Nice.
Dead. Yo, Ryan's low.
Oh, I messed up.
I'm dead.
Just gonna kill Bab. Nice.
Rank close, low.
Yo, Ryan's rolling.
Bab low. I'm shooting them in the back. Like, they use lamp. Go. All kill
Jump one.
Still Lucio here, right?
One more.
Yeah, Lucio low.
I see the trees.
I don't see him, bro.
I have
Wait, I'm on bat. Bat low, bat one. I force line. Bat.
Big slam.
Dead.
Oh my god.
Kill that.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
GG.
What a turnaround.
Oh,
Nice job.
what a turnaround, guys. Well done.
Got our Ryan game for the season. There we go.
This is so awesome, Sauce.
For an expected, that was a lot harder than probably needed to be.
It's baiting you into another eye mirror.
He's gonna go Ryan, and then they're gonna have May Bastion.
Yeah, exactly. That. I'll roll on it. Fuck it. I'm probably better.
Ryan, May,
No,
Bastion.
that's bad. Maybe
Yeah, that's why they want the mirror. They baited you. Bend low.
Go bat. Force line.
Yeah.
Bat one.
Everyone stay calm.
I'm staying as calm as I can. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Good one. I'm going one.
Very
Huge. Right at one. Go. Keep it going. Good. Hammer.
I believe in you.
Keep on hammering.
Keep going. That guy's one. Holy shit, run.
It worked.
I'm terrified. This work? Does not work.
Sorry.
I'm back in a second.
On the back.
Force line. Nice. Good shit.
Oh, thank you.
There's no way.
Why is it so funny?
Also night.
Get off. Oh, I ran out of gas.
Awkward.
It was almost cool. I got touched, but I'm not gonna last long. No.
No, it's all my fault.
The Tracer's
One bad.
destroying me right now.
Dead. Nice. Killing Ryan.
That guy has shatter, but I'm like
Let's
1
get
HP.
Run now.
If they figure it out, I'm fucking dead.
Oh my gosh.
The passive's kicked in. I'm gonna live.
Vlad, I just see you panic calling. Like, Vlad is like this on point. Like,
I was 50 HP for like not joking 8 seconds. I think all 4 of the Rhine players are online at the same time. This is crazy.
All 4.
I thought we went extinct.
The craziest part is that no one's really playing May Bastion with it too, so we kind of get to have fun.
Yeah.
Can we kill him?
It just hurts.
What?
He's gonna pin me up too. Come on. Well, we all go together.
Is it alright?
Zen's low. I'm not even joking. Like a single HP.
I have the card.
I got run on the ground. I'm dead though. I'm gonna go Diva for that fucking Widow. I'm tired of dying to Diva and to the Widow and Tracer.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Nothing personal. Okay. That's insane. What?
Nice.
I'm so glad I have that passive, by the way. There's a Tracer in our spawn. Hey, come forwards there.
Where's the widow? Alright, guys,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
Peter's
call
lost
it
his
for now.
silver.
It is late for me, and I'm pulling it down. Sorry,
Alright,
I didn't do my
alright.
best, but I still had fun. GG's.
Fine.
GG's.
GG's.
Wait, that guy's Reinhardt icon is the highest level I've ever seen.
Way. We got put in the mixtape. What is this?
Soda split, top right.
I'm taking the Rhine off the map. Goodbye. What? I can't even break railings too. This might be one of the worst Rhine like bugs for Rhine I've ever seen.
Nice.
I'm gone. Goodbye. Huge move. Wait.
I dropped down to flank boop them.
Oh. Hey chat, can you tell how much impact the tanks are having in this game? Really looks like we're both popping off right now. Right? Dude, look at this intense, high intensity tank gameplay on both sides. You guys tell why one team is winning and one isn't? but they're all the way. You know those. Nice. They're kicked away. Oh. Oh, goodbye.
Wait, they don't touch.
Hey.
Nice.
GG.
This game was a fever dream.
Oh.
I like your Ryan victory pose.
I forgot I even had one.
It really shows the state.
Yeah. Oh, true.
Minus 47 plus 19.
It's so painful. I needs a rework. But what would it be? I don't know. To be honest with you.
So giants are mentioned in the Bible. There's some famous ones like Goliath, for example. There's a giant that I believe it was Noah faced. Noah faced giants in his age. So there's a few places that they're mentioned specifically, but there's this idea throughout the Old Testament that they were a reoccurring thing. Like when it ever talks about they go to Canaan, that they see giants in the land of milk and honey that they have to wipe out. There's giants among the Philistines, what have you. So the idea is there's this biblical record of giants, and there's also a record of giants throughout other written histories. Like pretty much every group of people either had a legend or history of giants somewhere in their culture. They tend to pop up around the historical record. And the idea is, since the Bible is the oldest, in my opinion, the oldest, debated between that and like Zoroastrianism as being the oldest religion ever, that it's the first evidence of giants existing, and in the Bible they're called Nephilim. So yes, Nephilim are like the starting route for a ton of crazy.
I'm sorry to interject.
theories.
We had a guest like 2 months ago arguing with me, telling me that Zoroastrianism wasn't the first religion. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I
watched that episode.
I do remember that. Yeah.
That was Aiden. That was Aiden. Yeah.
I remember that became more of an argument than I thought it would be. And I was just kind of like, oh damn! Like now we're like getting heated over like demons and shit.
If it helps Kyle any, the theory that most people have, like myself, who believe that Christianity was, or like the Bible, Judaism at the time was first, is that Judaism and Zoroastrianism were simultaneous, that they kind of branched out at the same point in the historical record. Which I have my own theories that Zoroastrianism is mentioned in the Old Testament as being other religions that are mentioned around the time of Abraham, but blah, blah, blah. You see what I mean? You got me in my zone.
No, that's interesting.
I have been admiring.
Yeah, I like this stuff.
Education since the start. I was like, it's cool when we have like a professional level guest on the show.
I like where I'm a Sunday school teacher. Like, you know, a lot of what I do is talking to, you know, people my age and stuff. They're like, oh, well, you know, Christ wants us to live this way, blah, blah, blah. But there's also a lot of, all right, kids, so I found this verse in Genesis. I think it means that aliens came to Israel, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get to go on my whole rants and stuff. So
That's
So
fun.
the Bible is kind of exacting when they give the dimensions of something like the ark. Do they ever tell us about how tall these giants are supposed to be? Because that's so important.
yes, yeah, it does. Whenever it mentions Goliath, which is, there's times that it mentions giants who stand with their waist at the height of man. That's more general. Goliath is specifically mentioned as, I think, 9.5 feet tall.
Yeah, shit. Well, all right.
Like Robert Wadlow.
Now, when you say 9.5 feet, are you accounting for like their feet being tiny? Did they actually use their foot as a foot in that time? Because to be fair, these are poorly fed Jewish men.
That's true.
About 5,000 years ago.
Correct.
These are small fellas.
Well, I think they used the measurement from your elbow to your wrist or something like that.
They use the measurement of cubits. They use the measurement of cubits. If I remember, it says that he was 6 cubits and a span, which a cubit's about 1.5 feet. So that comes out to a little over 9.5 feet.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. So like, obviously there you're dealing with some exaggeration because, like, I don't believe that in that time, even with like a pituitary thing or whatever makes people gigantic, that he'd have like the diet capable of surviving to manhood and being a 9 foot tall being.
No, you know what would be funny is like if like that's entirely true, but Goliath was one of those pituitary giants. He went out to fight David, and they're like, "There he is, the giant," and he has like crutches. He's like, "Oh, look at that beast!" And they just bully him with Ruststone. We were gonna see if you guys had any medical intervention for him. God, don't kill him.
Do you know about the Potsdam giants?
That sounds familiar.
So it was a Prussian infantry unit in like 1675. All right, now I can't remember if it was like the Prince of Prussia or whatever, the guy in charge, or at least in charge enough that he could have his own military unit at his whim, selected only the tallest men in the whole fucking Prussian Empire. Yeah.
Stupid question. Where is the tech tree in 1685? Like,
They got like shitty guns,
You're like-
like
Imperial Age, you have access to trebuchets.
shitty guns. There'd be a lot of cavalry and still like armor, I would imagine, and like silly hats with points on them, and probably some swords and pipes and shit.
swords, pipes, and invasion.
We're 100 years from the American Revolution, and like guns being that good.
Yeah, they were like,
So-
that's the time they were figuring out, like, we gotta phase out armor, because we're now making, like, muskets that can blast through stuff.
Well,
How
anyway,
does your-
this guy who I think is probably good was like fascinated with tall men. Okay, it was like his jam. So he like searches the kingdom, and
What's
there's
gay
this
about
quote-
that?
There's this quote from him.
Hey, fuck your mouth.
There's this great quote, and he's like,
You can't have a harem of tall men, or it's
he's got this great quote. I want Zach to find it. I've given some context clues to his identity. I just can't remember the fucking Prince of Prussia's name. But he said something like, keep your this, keep your that. Give me a tall man.
You may be onto something.
But he was like, this would be a good video, I think, because like this regiment apparently was really tall guys, because he searched the whole like country and got up, and he even had a breeding program where he was trying to like pair up the tallest women and the tallest men to, make an even taller regiment. He never used them in battle because he was so beloved. They were so beloved.
What
to him.
on earth?
I'm looking at his Wikipedia. The height of the king who organized this, 5'3". And so imagine how monstrous this battalion, and apparently the minimum height was 6'2", which back then is enormous.
Today,
400 years ago.
the tallest guy in the room.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like if you're 6'2", 400 years ago, like you're probably starting conversations walking.
I bet you would find the average height for the times that, because that's important. But I would guess you're like Harvard, essentially. You're like a 6'5", 6'6" guy. Like everybody, oh shit, one of them are here.
Yeah. Yeah. They'd think there's something like wrong with you, or they'd be just like jealous. Like, wow, that guy must eat every day.
No, it'd be hard to be. Like, again, I think it would be. There's a reason people used to be smaller, and because it didn't work to be big. Like a big man can't like work. All right, 5'5", you do a day's work. That gives you enough grain to support your 5'5" body or whatever, the boss. I just don't think the 6'6" guy can do enough work to get him enough grain to like make up the difference. You know what I mean? He's not working hard enough to get enough grain more than the other guy. We're all getting fed the same.
I wonder if we got shorter after agriculture. Is that something I made like that people were taller? That like some hunter, or maybe there's like some other thing. They found like hunter-gatherer tribes that are pretty tall because they ate like so much meat, like Neanderthals. Or I guess Neanderthals are like a kind of a different thing.
Giant.
Yeah, it was the
circles
Nephilim.
back in. Yeah, there you go.
All circles back in.
Does that mean that angels are black?
No.
What?
Angels are it's a total misconception that angels are even people, man. You've read
I know
the
that.
Bible. You've seen the orb of eyes.
I had to make a
and
black
horror.
joke. Athleticism. I know it's not theologically correct.
No, see, that's not canon.
The opening, right? The
Canon.
giant
Oh, I love
rolling
calling the
rings
Bible
of
canon.
Yeah, it's not canon.
Have you heard that? Like, so we've heard like nose size, hands, feet as being an approximation for dick size. Everyone's heard this, and you've
Yeah.
probably heard that it's inaccurate. right? That's
Yeah.
not true. Do you know what is an accurate estimation of dick size? Like a way you can tell who has bigger dicks?
Box
Probably
of
age.
BT?
Like, you
People
can
over
know that you.
13
Huh.
tend to have bigger dicks.
No, what do you tell us? How do you spot a dong in the wild?
It's the
Very
width of
carefully.
the nose. The nose width apparently corresponds to dick size. And I've heard this. And I'm like, is this a roundabout way to say black people have big dicks? Like, can you think of a group of people that tend to have wide noses?
This is what happens when you do statistics, but you don't account for all factors. It turns out wide noses is the prime indicator. Wait, did you look at any? Wait a minute. Can I? I mean, I don't mean to be. No, here it comes. I'm just saying, statistically, maybe we want to look at a broader array of factors and attributes in the group.
It's like we can't figure out what it is, but all the people who are the best at math prefer PlayStation controllers. It's a weird conundrum. One of God's great mysteries.
What
those
does God
people.
mean by this?
Which group do you hate the most? No, I'm kidding. I saw. I've scrolled through the Pat, who's worst to tolerable? Let's go. I saw this thing from my YouTube short recommendations where someone was suggesting that I think it was one of the states. Maybe there's a little of that silly legislation that never goes anywhere. But the idea was to have mandatory paternity tests at birth for all newborns in the state of such and such.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I like that idea so much.
It won't happen.
I like that idea.
Well, I don't know what's involved in a paternity test.
Cheek swab.
Is that it?
Let's pretend it is. You know, you're right. We're not gonna pump your baby or anything. We're not gonna like take one of those things they clip
They
cow
puncture
ears
the
with.
baby
and,
anyway. Yes, there's all sorts of blood coming from like the
We'll take some of the blood we already got. All right,
Take
that's
a
our
core
promise.
sample.
Not a drop more. That's our promise. I love that idea. I love that idea because it would be nice to know. I watched this one. You can't tell if there's YouTube shorts or just YouTube videos in general, and videos on the internet in general. If it's this guy's fucking drama channel where they act out fucking scripts and screenplays, and I watch a performance, or if it's like a prank or like a bit of real life drama. But it was the one where the guy had a paternity test proving that like his 5 or 6 year old daughter wasn't his, and he was telling her to get her shit
First
and
one
go.
white.
Get your daughter and go. And I don't. Again, it's probably like some dude's like drama YouTube channel where he acts out all sorts of screenplays and funny bits that they write. But I was convinced. I was like, shit. That's smart. Get your daughter and go at like 5 or 6. Like he's a talking human being at this point. We know each other. Like,
Yeah,
Haven't you bonded with her at
Oh
all?
my
It's been
dude,
6
what the
years.
hell's going
yeah,
on?
like this is like a real bond. That's your kid at this point. Like I don't know if you can fucking pull the plug. Maybe get some like Big Brother program going or something. But I can't just pull the plug.
Yeah.
Is this the cold one or the old one?
Hell yeah. We making
Do
money.
you have like,
Money,
because I do this too with like Diet Pepsis and stuff. Do you have a little graveyard collecting? A little can graveyard?
I'll be honest. I'll count. I see one.
I think the camera.
No, then you see the whole room, and then I have to deal with the real shame of. No, because like the room. All right, so when
I do have a glass dildo connection, and that's why
and
the
it's not
camera's not
even.
pointed down.
And I promise it's not like filth and then like embarrassing junk or anything. It's that when I moved in, I just sort of put my stuff in this office, and all my extra boxes are just in a pile right there, and they're gonna stay there until I move out of this place. Because like, it's like I don't decorate an office I'm gonna be in for 11 months. You know what I mean? Like it just didn't make any sense. So anyway, there's 2 empties over there. There's 2 over here. And that's because I cleaned up like yesterday pretty thoroughly. But at times, if I'm gaming, especially like last month when I was playing Tarkov, just a tremendous amount, there'd be a dozen around me because that's what I drink in a day. Like I would clean up at the end of the day. But like, the real thing was like, can't swipe my mouse. I gotta get
Вы, конечно, не
They're
помешало.
closing in on me.
Well, my cans.
Yeah.
My
Because it's all
precious
I do.
cans.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever see people with flip phones now?
Mhm.
At this
They got
point,
the-
it's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you trying to prove, sir?
It's a burner.
Oh,
phone.
someone doesn't need maps.
Нормально,
Oh,
живем,
you
пацаны.
have a good sense of direction. Fuck you. That's what I really think when I see people
Oh, I
with
don't
flip
mean a
phones. I'm like,
traditional
wow, so someone doesn't get lost all the time. Fine.
I don't mean the traditional
Loser.
shell. Have you seen the new ones that are just like a screen? They're essentially your
Oh, the
phone,
folding
but
Yeah,
screen.
there's
Yeah.
a
folded in
S
fucking
diary.
half. Yeah.
It seems like something I don't need, and it just adds another failure point. Like, if I'm gonna use my
they
computer
put that
or my
thing in a
laptop.
machine, dude. They put that thing in a machine. I've watched it. They put it in that machine and like bent it over and over like 10 million times or something.
Well, I don't want
I-
that one. I want the one that hasn't been bent.
No,
10 million
no,
times.
it's all been bent. I like it,
that
but
one.
it doesn't seem like it's worth the like extra money because like the main thing
Yeah.
that I like about my phone is it's
That's not a feature.
it's-
Imagine if you bought a grill and they're like, trust us, at the factory, someone used this to cook thousands of meals. You'd be like, fuck you, give me a new grill. Like,
Not your phone. They don't bend your phone. They bend a phone to make sure that your phone could be bent without
No,
anything
every
going
phone.
awry. They don't bend them all.
we are losing so much money on this 10 million bend no phone policy.
That's all.
These are awful. Why can't we just ride about it?
Millions of factory workers. Carpal tunnel
Don't
syndrome.
cry about it.
Don't ride.
You're a riot.
Don't be a riot.
This manufacturing philosophy will not work with condoms.
It comes with
What the
Came in it 10 times. It mostly worked. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Wendigoon, what, to get very serious, not really, but like, what is, because I know you're a Christian, what is the point of like the Christian sex where you're like, I think I have more not in common with you than in common with you. Like, because like most like Christians I've talked to about like Mormons will say like they've got the gist of it, but they are way out of line on a lot of stuff. But you know they kind of got the core a bit right, other than the whole like other testament thing.
Yeah,
which people just-
yeah. I as far as Mormons go, I'm pretty absolutely removed from them. Everyone that I've talked to, I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. It's like, wait, did you just make that part up? Which they're like, yeah.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, that's the vibe. But yeah, them definitely far removed from things like Jehovah Witnesses and all that. Anything that involves new revelations. So, like, you know, you had the Bible, you had like, which the New Testament, which is the most recent part of the Bible, is entirely written by people who were alive and either were with Christ or were friends with the disciples who like wrote letters to them or whatever. So that's like Jesus. And then if any religion is like, yeah, and then 800 years later, there was a second part. That's where I'm like, no, I don't play ball with that. Because at that point, they're just adding stuff for their own, you know, whatever objective. A little, yes,
Good,
a lot.
because that was the greatest con man this side of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
This side, both sides of the Mississippi, because he got booted to the other side.
He did.
Fucking shit. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
but him, I'm not Catholic. Catholics are closer because, you know, they still believe in Christ and all that. Not a fan of like the church as an office or, you know, the Pope or the orders of the priest and all that. But if you believe in Christ, then, you know, we've got something to talk about. But there's a lot of people who they had a lot of asterisks to that term, a lot
With the
of
Catholic
new
thing,
ideas.
like I know most of my family's Catholic, but like the whole praying, like to like including Mary in your prayers was always to me like, what are we doing here? Like, there's no part in the New Testament that says to include Mary. It seems like this is a bunch of pomp and circumstance that they included, kind of like the Pharisees and Sadducees back in the day, to keep people kind of constricted based on ritual than by social constraints than by anything else. Like the same way confession. Like, if you've seen the bullshit people say now about like confession, actually, like the reason it's a thing is because like the priest is meant to be like someone who helps you through problems, and it's like, no, That was not the impetus of confession. The impetus of confession was a way to goad an entire community into spilling secrets to a central position that then could use that information to control. Literally in the fucking Bible, Jesus says, what did Jesus say? Did he say that when you pray, go into public loudly and raise your arms? No, Jesus said, when you pray, do not go into public and raise your arms and scream as the Pharisees and Sadducees do. Instead, go into your room in private. Just you and the Lord. Isn't that what Jesus said? I was under the impression that that was kind of spelled out in the middle of John, but I guess not, or no, Luke. Like, I really, that always fucking turned me the wrong way about Catholicism, is like, it takes all of what Jesus came back to do, which is fulfilling the covenant and making it so that the separation of fabrics and the not eating of pork, the shellfish, all this stuff was fulfilled. It's not to be followed anymore. And to tack on an additional layer of like, oh, now you have to worry about paying money to get out of, to get your relatives out of purgatory. Like that's a despicable perversion of, if you believe in Christ and you believe that's what he came to do, that doesn't really gel. And I'm not even a religious person, really.
Wow, that was cool. Sunday school Taylor popped out there. That was nice. I like that.
I want some consistency there, and I don't like. And the Catholics I know are good people. The vast majority of them are Christmas and Easter Catholics who don't care about it, who don't do. People don't know this. Most Catholics don't do confession. Like they don't go and do that shit.
Of course
anyway,
not.
You know, but like the whole impetus of it is like gross. It was a way to get dirt on people who trusted you and then use it for material gain. Fucked up.
I found out something about Waffle House today. I thought that, like...
You are always flush with new and exciting Waffle House news.
What is the latest and greatest in Waffle House news?
Well, see,
I love Waffle House.
Like, growing up, I always thought of Waffle House as this thing that's just everywhere. And that's because Waffle House was invented here in Atlanta 70 years ago. And there are more Waffle Houses in Georgia than anywhere else. We got over 400 in this state. There's only like 2,200 or something, roughly. So, like,
you're hoarding them. So.
The rest of you don't have the concentration of Waffle House that we have, so you don't even understand the experience. I want to quickly tell the international audience and the lame-o Americans here who don't know what Waffle House is about, like what it's about. They cook the food right there in front of you on a big-ass griddle. And by they, I mean the ex-cons that are working there tonight. And it's a good thing they're there, because they're probably going to be friends with a lot of the clientele who show up to fight later, so they'll be able to cool things off.
It's
Don't
like
do it, bro. You don't want to go in like I did. Like there's gonna be a fight tonight, and the best part is the fight will be set to whoever had 50 cents last, because there's a jukebox in the goddamn corner. I know it doesn't make any sense, but there is. 50 cents gets you a fucking song in 2023. The bathrooms are disgusting, but the food is amazing. It really is good food, because they don't skimp out on the ingredients. Don't get a T-bone steak there. That's just know where you are. But like, if you're getting like a waffle and some grits and eggs, it's an amazing breakfast place with a really fun clientele, because they're open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They don't care like whose birthday it is, who got liberated today, like who's proud this month. They're working every day.
Yeah.
Even their upper management, like their CEOs, it's fucking Christmas, bro. Get in here. It's the waffle way.
Maybe
waffle
Georgia
way.
has better Waffle Houses, because that's where it is. Because the ones here that I've been to is not like they're not cooking stuff in front of you. It's not like a hibachi style.
Where is they hiding the grill?
It's a guy in the back, and there's like
in
a
the
porch
back.
that you
There's
can
a
like
door.
see him.
You've been lied to.
Bullshit.
You've been lied to. That's
not a real
Waffle
Waffle House.
No
yeah,
way.
No, real
way.
Waffle
They're going to
House.
Huddle House or something.
Dude, there's a
Yeah.
The one in Columbia, Missouri doesn't.
I forget what happened. There was like a major hurricane that rolled into North Carolina, and Fayetteville was drowned. And it made the news that Waffle House used the locks. They closed. They're like,
Wow.
this is the first time we've
That's
locked the lock on this
insane.
door in 17 years.
My word.
They get robbed.
I eat at Waffle House all the time. I am a huge Waffle House connoisseur, big fan of it here in Tennessee. And one time, not too long ago, I was in a Waffle House at like 1 a.m. with some friends. And this lady came up to me and recognized me.
1 minute.
And she, like, not to
saw
be mean to her,
Pooh
but
on
she
that
was a bit
motherfucker.
rougher looking, you know. It looked like she had like
Waffle House.
Runs.
She belonged.
she belongs in a Waffle House, right? And I mean that in the best way. But she like took a picture with me and everything, and it was kind of quiet in there. So like all the workers saw like this girl taking a picture with me. So when I go up to pay the bill, the girl who's checking me out, she goes, "So that was Donna that you was with. How does Donna know you?" And I'm like, oh well, I'm a YouTuber. I make videos. She said, oh okay, we thought you was her parole officer.
Getting a photo with her parole officer. Man, I want to remember this time in my life forever.
This is good evidence that I was here at 1:15 a.m. on Tuesday.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you've made it. Getting recognized at Waffle House
That really
I assume 2:15 in the morning.
Like that's the point where you're like, so this is fame. This is what it's about.
Do you think did she at least comp you?
Getting mistaken for a parole officer in a Waffle House, what I always dreamed of. Yeah, yeah. Finally,
that means that you looked respectable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Or maybe they thought you were like undercover as like a sneaky parole officer trying to catch you doing the dirt at their Waffle House.
It was honestly probably just because I was wearing a collared shirt, and they were like, "Whoa,
that'll do it,
sir."
La-di-da!
If it's not
Becky,
Sunday
clean
after
the vomit
church.
off of Mister. What was your name, sir?
Oh, well, I
need
need
chair.
I didn't realize we were serving the president of these United States here tonight.
The health
Pants and
inspector's here,
shoes,
quick.
too.
Usually, I have gone in there.
Well,
And
someone's not even fall down drunk.
I've gone in before, and the tables had like someone else's like food like all over it, and but I just stood by the table until she came. I was like, you got to clean this. I was like, what? I was like, the fucking table. The whole fucking thing. Like there's
the
like
other guy's meal.
There's like a dead straw wrapper there. Like I could tell he had hash browns and he likes ketchup on them. Like, come on. Like, what the fuck are you doing to me? But most of the time it's okay. I'll tell you where my fond memories come from. It's from hunting and being up really early. And like if you wanted like any time that we would get up at night to do like some nighttime farmer shit. It was Waffle House, and it was just I've got a lot of like good memories there where there weren't, I don't know, people fighting, which happens there a lot. It was just like, I don't know, me and my dad and like a waitress at like 4 a.m. or something like there, sitting there having coffee. So
what's a
I like Waffle
nighttime
House
farming activity?
Oh man, when they catch, so you know you're there raising chickens from like little yellow peep thing to big white bird that gets butchered and thrown into frozen dinners and whatnot. And that happens over the course of 7 weeks. At the end of that 7 weeks, they show up to get them. And I don't know if you've ever considered how they get 150,000 chickens.
No, but I've
put
seen
them on
Yellowstone.
I don't know what they do on Yellowstone. Do they have one of those machines?
Involved.
Have you never seen that where they usher the herds of chicken across the plains?
With the
Someone tried that at one point and lost a lot of money.
Man, I really thought at least a few of them were going to make it across the river.
Ranching. Wait, fuck! No, don't go over there.
So what they do, if you've ever seen like a semi truck loaded down with white big chickens,
I think I have.
Then and they're crammed in there in those big cubes, the cube cages, essentially. What they do is they do this at night because if the chickens can't see you coming, they go docile and just kind of sit still. They do it at night in complete darkness. All the equipment in the chicken house gets raised up to the ceiling via like these drills that like winch it up. And then everything gets moved out of the way, and now you have an ocean of 25 to 40,000 7-pound chickens sitting there, kind of half awake. And then they like burst the doors open, and like a dozen Mexicans storm in there wearing armor and respirators, and they start grabbing them, as many as they can in a handful. They have this really crazy. I've seen them do it. Like they'll get a chicken's foot between each finger. Like one, and each chicken is held by 1 foot, so they can just reach in and have like a dozen birds in like 6 in each fist.
And they're all dressed like
Oh yeah. And they're covered. They're on the outside. They're wearing like long johns because they're doing the filthiest, scariest work ever. And these things have talons to not. Yeah, I guess nothing scary, but if they get you, then you've got an open wound in a very filthy environment. So they're all armored up with like cloth and respirators and goggles and shit. And they're grabbing them up a dozen at a time and swinging them into those cage cubes that are being delivered and retrieved like clockwork by front-end loaders. And those front-end loader drivers, they're on methamphetamine. 110% of the time, and they are fucking swinging those steel fucking forks around, and like guys are jumping out of the way, and it's just like, get the fuck out of his way then. Like
He's got a job
they,
to do.
So that's the nighttime farm. It's going in there and raising all that equipment up.
I
Did you
actually
ever try
honestly
that?
thought this is how it was done. Like if you had never told me, they back the truck up to the building. The door for the building is shaped and sized exactly perfect for the truck. And then they put ramps, and I really thought they just herded the chickens in like they were cattle.
Nah, they're shitty, dude. Like they're really, really, really stupid, and they're in a herd of 25,000.
Scary.
You can drive them with flashlights a little, but the problem is that the modern chicken isn't built to deal with a lot of excitement. They'll have heart attacks in very high numbers. Like anything that spooks them. Like when they talk about foxes getting in, they'll kill a few, but a fox can only eat so many chickens. He'll spook 1,000 of them. Or even worse, he'll scare them and they'll pile up on top of each other and suffocate everything on the bottom layer. And then because they're already in a bacteria-rich environment at a high temperature and their body heat combines with that, they decompose at an incredible rate. After seeing how fast they can decompose, I mean like 6 hours, they've turned purple and putrid. Like
Really?
after seeing that, it's like, in the right environment, you would think that like a human body would just disappear in like a couple weeks or something like that. If it's out there in like a filthy enough, like the right conditions, and certainly if there's predation, like if there's anything to come and take hunks out. But just like sitting there on that floor, they would turn to the most disgusting shit that you'd have to get a shovel to clean up.
How big is like this pile? I'm trying to picture like the pile of chickens. Like big enough to cause like how tall is that to cause like a purple rotting in 6 hours? I can't believe that.
Halfway up your knee. It depends how big they are, like how big each bird is. So like maybe knee high in a corner, they just pile up and die. They're fucking retarded. Like they'll just a rat will come in when they're little babies, and apparently the most tender part of like a chicken is like the back of its fucking neck or something. And so it's either that or rats kill for fun, like pure enjoyment of it. Because what they would do is they would go in, and these are those little yellow things. Like their wings are just like little things. The rat would come and he would kill between 100 and 150 of them in a sitting, and he would pile them up, and they would all have one wound on the back of its neck where it like fucking killed them. Maybe it like it didn't eat any of them. It was killing them for fun, or the back of the neck is the tasty bit. And I don't believe that. So it was just killing them for fun. And the cool part. Not cool because it's like, oh, all those poor baby chickens that I was going to sell for meat in 7 weeks. Really, you're just not going to shovel them. But it's like, he piled them up. Can he pile them up because that's fun for him and he's keeping score and he likes to see a big pile? I didn't know I was coming.
I think like if you left gum wrappers and rotten eggs and shit like that, the rat would take them and put them in his stash.
So this isn't in his stash. He's killing them and making a pile right there. Which means he's moving them. He's killing them from the area and he's bringing them back to this in the floor, just in the middle of the room there. And
is
he's left
bizarre.
your little pile. I've seen it multiple times and it's creepy. So when my dad first bought that place, someone else had allowed it to become infested with rats, and that was the problem. I was a little kid at this time, and getting rid of the rats was a real ordeal because they were smart and they stopped eating poison after a while. So we would go in there at night and we'd flick all the lights on. 1,000 light bulbs light up, and you could see them running like a herd of them. Running from where we are back to the very rear of the building, and the rear of the building just has this flat wall. They're doors, but they're like the biggest church doors you can imagine that like swing like barn doors, like double. And there's a screen door on the inside of that big wooden door. It's chicken wire, so they climb up that chicken wire. They're little paws, so you can when they get to the back, you can see them flowing up the wall. Going into the ceilings is where they live. They live up in the ceiling or under the concrete pad. So we go back there, and I'd have a shotgun, and my dad would have a pistol. and while they were running up, it was just shooting them off the wall. We shot the doors off the building. we had to replace the doors on the building after like a while. But we shot all the rats. We would also do this thing. This is what you do on a farm because there's literally nothing to fucking do. Gassing rats was a real just great day. So
the winner of an activity. And
yeah, I was the best rat gasser of them all. I promise. It was like in a different life I had. Well, anyway, so we take a truck.
Oh my god!
You
I
take a
just
truck
realized where that
and
didn't go.
And you hook the exhaust up. You hook the exhaust up to a pipe, and you pump that down into the rat hole. And the rat has like made a network of like Viet Cong-esque tunnels under a big slab of concrete. And you can see there's exits on every side, 2 or 3 on every side of this square, big rectangle, really big surface, like the size of a garage, and it's out in the open. And so we jam up every hole we can see, except for 2. One we gas, the other we wait at with pistols. So I'm on the other side with like a Ruger 22 pistol and 810, and as they run out, I'm fucking 2-gunning them as they try to get by. They're a little groggy, so that makes it easy. Pretty fucked up from that gas. And, it's all bright when they come out. It's the middle of the day. So, they're easy.
Did you ever try? Did you ever try your hand at the actual like gathering of the chickens, like that? Like grab by their foot.
Fuck! No, that is not something that's their job. That's on them. That's like. I don't know how to put it. That was just their job. That's a thing that like that comes. It's like out of our hands at a certain point, and it's like done. Like we don't have to worry about like if they get slaughtered or if that truck careens into a ditch along the way. We'll just get average pay. Oh, one truck died. What do you get paid per truck on average? All right, we'll pay you that. Like for spillage or whatever. Like once they've laid hands on them, our job's fucking over. I don't give a shit what happens. I'm not touching them. That's the most disgusting job in all of it. When those guys come out, man, I feel bad for those guys. You'll see them at gas stations and stuff. Like they're in a white cargo van, and it's like 8, 12, like always Mexican guys. I've never seen anyone else do that job because it's so rough and it must not pay well. And they are filthy. And like after they've done their work, they're just in there piled up sleeping because sometimes the job will be at my dad's farm and they'll start at night. And then the whole day will pass, and they'll go again the next night, and they're just sleeping in that van out there, filthy, with no bathroom. Dad's telling me, you better not be sitting behind my building. And they got to deal with that. It's a rough job.
That sounds awful. They should get paid more. Sounds like a difficult job. I didn't know if that was one of the duties that like they show up and you're like, oh please, Dad, don't ask me to help with this one.
Fuck no, I wouldn't help if I'd been asked or told to. Or that's a really shitty job. I'm telling you, like I don't run away from home. I don't know where you go. Like if you run away from home, where the fuck do you go?
It is embarrassing.
Пожрать бы, конечно, не помешало. Чики-брики, пальчик выкинь. Ну ничего. Сыщику все продам, это живем.
Once you realize you have nowhere to go.
Yeah,
Oh, man, I got no money. Like, I'm 11. Like, I'm gonna make some pedophile's day on the road. Like, it's scenario.
Dude, it's such a ridiculous proposition. I remember I was having an argument with my dad when I was 6. I had a driver's license, and just real screaming match. He was like, "Get out of here, go!" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like laughing now. He's like, "Leave, you're out." I'm like, "No, I'm not. Look, you can't kick me out. I just did it." I'm like, you can't, because you know I have nowhere to go. I was like, what am I gonna do? Park the truck at the grocery store and live there now? No, you're not gonna like that when your friends walk by and I'm out there. Please, Mr. Jacobs, my daddy threw me out. Please, will you buy me some potato wedges inside the grocery store, sir? I've got 17 cents. And it's just like, well, shit, I guess I can. Fuck!
Fuck! Touche, son.
I like that Dad was reasonable with situations like that, because there was also the time when, and he didn't know it when he did have room to negotiate, but me and my cousin were on the back porch making a, what's the word?
Long.
It sounds like that, but it explodes. And so we were making, so we were making this device out there about yay big, and I was wrapping her up, and my dad's watching me wrap it up, and I've explained to him how it works and why it's safe, and how I've tried it on smaller scales, and now this is the big boy, and how that washing machine out there is about to meet a very untimely end. But I'm doing it 300 meters from the house, and you'll be able to see it from here. It'll be cool. My mom's like, "You're just gonna let him sit there and do that? You're just gonna let him sit there and make a bomb?" and he goes, "Well, what do you want me to do? How can I stop him?" And I was thinking, just a simple stop would have done it, Dad. At any point during the construction of this device, you'd said stop, I would have thrown her away. But too late now. Let's look at that washing. And that washing machine turned inside fucking out. That thing was.
How did it go off? Was there a fuse or?
Yeah. So you can.
How did you build it specifically?
Yeah. So what you want to do?
I mean, as opposed to shooting it. Or,
Oh man, I can tell you,
Go ahead,
so
Kyle,
easy.
get the book out. Look,
I've told y'all how to do it before. You just go back to that one, or you could sparklers.
People have made things out of sparklers, and it was more potent than they expected it to be, and it was trouble.
Yeah,
it's on
those
like
are
news
stupid
stories.
People.
Like,
See, all right, so people who would make sparkler devices, they would do stuff to the sparklers. Nothing crazy. You can see videos of it on YouTube that they still allow that. For some reason, they do. But depending on what kind of sparkler you use, it'll have 2 different effects. If you use one color, most colors really, because of the chemical composition they use to get that color. I'm not a chemist, I don't fucking know. But what it'll do is it'll create this huge meltdown effect, where all the steel rods that are in the center of this big bundle of sparklers just sort of fuse together in this melty pot metal pool of scariness, and it'll fizzle and sparkle sometimes, especially if any water hits it. It's real dangerous to be around because it's so hot and it's so concentrated. But if you use a certain other color, who knows which one, it's just a bomb. It's just a heat sensitive explosive, real quickly. And it was shocking to me how cheap they were and how readily available. I pulled up with a shopping cart full. I mean, a shop remember Breaking Bad when he's lecturing the guy, you don't get everything. Hire things piecemeal.
One place.
Yeah.
To draw suspicion. I'm literally there with a shopping cart full of who knows what color and cannon fuse. Rolls of cannon fuse.
Like a Milky Way on top.
We have
to
some
throw 'em
celebrating
off.
to do.
and they're like,
put a birthday card on top of it.
But they were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm making sparkler devices." And they're like, "Really? That works?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Notice that these are 13 cents a box. It was wildly cheap for what they were and what they would.
Do you guys remember I remember like as a kid seeing news stories about that like every Halloween time, where like anchors would get on there and be like, the new thing teenagers are doing with sparklers, more at 7. I remember like my parents watching that, and even then thinking like, I don't think like this is telling more people how to do this, man. Like that, like the fact that
I learned
Fox
from you
4 is talking about this right now is actually not helpful if they're trying to reduce this.
Yeah, I learned from
doing it though. Like I know Kyle was, but like I don't know. I'm stuck.
So overblown. So this is for Wendigo, and I was poking around your channel recently, and you've been leaning. You always do, but like scary stuff. I think that's my favorite of your content is like the unnerving, spooky things, and
the weirdness.
What would your recommendation like? What's a good rabbit hole for me if I want to get like fucking like scared? And and if it doesn't matter to me at all, if I end up at the end and I'm like, I don't buy this, or I end up at the end and I'm like, oh my god, this seems real, take that out of it. Like just scare me.
Is there anything specific you're afraid of? Like, is there one kind of fear, one lingering thing that bothers you per se?
I'm more afraid of like serial killer style people than I am of like ghosts and that kind of stuff. So like someone who like tortures people is scary and like unexpectedly like is in your house one day and he kidnaps you and tortures you in your basement. That's a lot scarier to me than like, I think I saw an apparition.
Like, I will say some, because I've read, whenever I did the serial killer series, I read through a lot of transcripts of like evidence that like, you know, initial police crime scene reports of how murders were and like interviews they did with the killer. And some of the worst ones I remember was William Bonin. I forget his real name, but the Golden State Killer. And the guy who was called like the Vampire of Colombia, his name, it was a Spanish name, I forget what it was. Those were the 3 that when I went through the series, I was a different person after reading through like everything that they did.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this guy William Bonin.
So William Bonin. Let me make sure I'm saying that name right.
Or William Bonin, perhaps.
Yeah, is it the guy who looks like me? He has long hair when you look at the picture, because everyone made that joke. Yes,
you know, a little bit.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Everyone made that joke. William Bonin was a child murderer who, what he would do is he had a couple accomplices who, if I remember correctly, were guys who were like either, I can't remember if they were mentally ill or if they were younger and just kind of like, he kind of suckered them into what he was doing. It started out as like, hey, we're going to rob some people. And then eventually it got to child murder. But he had this van he would drive around in, and he would get kids. He'd find like these boys who were like 14, 15. It's like, hey, you want to go to a party? We're going to have like beer and stuff. And he'd get the kids to hop in the van. Yeah, there it is. That's the picture everyone says looks like me. He'd get the kids to hop in the van, and it was in California. He would just take them down some back road, and like the details of what he did to these children are all manner of depraved for hours on end. And then like the part that I remember, because like, you know, I read about a lot of stuff like that where it's like, yeah, he did XYZ to the boys, and then he would strangle them, I think was the way he'd kill them. But he would take stuff from them and then use it later as a joke. Like one of the accomplices said that there's one boy he killed who had like $40 on him. So he kept the $40, and the next time they picked up a kid, they're like, hey, you want McDonald's? So they go and get McDonald's, and he's using the $40 and poking his accomplice like, hey, remember where this came from? Isn't that funny? And like, just like
Jesus, so just not sadistic.
Not just depravity, but like relishing in it, like how much he enjoyed it. Like, and when he was caught, like no regret, just like, well, there it is, you know. I think it might have been him. It might have been someone else, but I'm pretty sure it was him. That while he was in jail, he wrote letters to the mothers of the kids he killed, talking about how much he enjoyed killing them. Like,
I know that Albert Fish did that.
Albert Fish did
in the late 1800s, like, and the Albert Fish letters are so fucking depraved. We've talked about it on this show years and years ago. Like, he like kidnapped, murdered, and then like ate children. Yeah. And then he would write letters to the parents of those children bragging about how how he maneuvered their kid, what he did to them before, how he cooked them, how delicious they were, thanking them for it. Like the most over, like if Albert Fish was a character in a movie today, you'd go, I can't get into this. It's unrealistic.
He's way too over the top.
It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
You know, at least tamp it down to a Joffrey or a Ramsay. This guy's over the top. I can't buy into this. Like, but they're really, it's a good reminder. Like evil, like there are evil people. Like there are people who not only are indifferent, but they get off on harming others.
That guy, Albert Fish, he was so messed up that when he was in court, he asked to be executed by guillotine because he said if he was able to hear the blood rush from his neck for a split second when it happened, that would be the best pleasure he could ever experience. Like just an animal, just like a monster. Yeah.
He was like independent, like he was sadistic and masochistic. So like he would torture the shit out of children, and then he would like put his penis and testicles like on top of his kitchen table and nail it to the table.
Yep.
Like that, like, and so he was a lunatic.
In places, he was. That guy needed to be put down.
That's a fun like little story right before bed. Highly recommend it. Albert Fish. Look into him. Read the Albert Fish letter. It's reprehensible.
But yeah, so like
those are good suggestions. I got them pulled up now. Look at
those serial killers are good. I would also suggest some like cult leaders are often kind of treated as like a hee hee haha, like a goofy, like isn't this guy quirky? Like even if there were murders, it's like wow, these people were so dumb or whatever. But when you read about like some of the ways that cult leaders indoctrinated people around them, it is depressing. Like Ervil LeBaron. He was one of the guys. He's a lot of people misunderstand LeBaron as being like a founder of Mormonism. He was famous because in the early days of Mormonism, he got kicked out and started like a whole cult separate to Mormonism.
Okay.
He was like a big practicer of polygamy and stuff like that. And what he would do is he had a theory that he pulled out of the Old Testament and he called it blood redemption. I think it's blood redemption, blood sacrilege, something like that. And it was the idea that some people were so sinful in their lives, the only way that they could go to heaven is if they're murdered by righteous people and like a prayer said over them or whatever. So what Ervil would do is if there was like, say he had like, 20 wives or whatever, and say one of the daughters of one of those wives disagreed with him or tried to leave, he would go to the mother of that girl and be like, hey, do you want your daughter to go to heaven? You're going to have to kill her. And like he would talk these poor delusional people into murdering family members because he said it's the only way they could get into the gates. And like reading the testimonies of people who were in that group, oh my word, some of the most terrifying stuff ever. That guy was absolutely evil. But yeah, there's a lot of cult leaders like that who are very messed up.
Who are some other interesting, some other cult leaders? I'm woefully misinformed or uninformed, I guess, on so much of the cult shit. I don't know enough about that. Heaven's Gate is about like the extent of what I've looked into, but that's like the Beatles of cults. Like, and so like you can't really say like, oh yeah, I'm into cults, and it's like, oh, name 3 cults. Heaven's Gate.
Name their album. Name 3 of their albums.
Yeah,
Go
name
ahead.
3 of their albums, idiot. Oh man, I've been called out. So I need to find a better one. But like you're 1,000,000% right about the whole cult thing of people being smarmy and smug. Like these idiots, they didn't know. It's like
these
people who are in like influence circles, cults, like they can't see outside it. By design, all of their interactions and the social cost of disagreement are incorporated into that. If they had a robust system and network of people who weren't involved in that cult, then it would be easier. Like that's why the first step of any cult or like indoctrination is separating you from your family, separating you from your friends, making you believe that nothing can be trusted except for what is said here. And when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who have done the same thing, they've done. Tony, he distanced from his family and his friends, and he hasn't had an issue with it. What's wrong with you? are you not bought in? Do you not believe what we believe? Like those kind of social
You're not going to let it down, are you? You're not. You're one of us. You're not going to go against it. Yeah, that happens all the time.
You pretty much your only friends and family are us now, and you're disappointing us. Like, what's going to happen?
There's this weird misconception, and a lot of it's just because they don't know any better. But there's this misconception a lot of people have that like happy people who were doing well in life join cults, but it's almost never that. It's like I don't know if I've talked about them before. I know it was on a podcast. I don't think it was on PKA. I talked about the Anthill Kids. Did I do this diatribe?
I don't recall the Anthill Kids. No.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
The Anthill Kids were a cult in the 70s. It was either the 60s or 70s. They were led by a guy named Roche Thoreau. Roche, I think it's either Roch or Roche. It's a French name. Roche was a pastor in, I forget what denomination of church. It was some branch of Christianity for
Seventh-day Adventist.
Yes, thank you. Seventh-day Adventist. Before he broke off and then up in French Canada began this farm. And what he would do is he would go to these people in bars. He would pray apparently for women like near like hospitals, like women who had miscarriages. Like he was seeking out people who were in the worst point of their life. And he'd effectively start with the evangelist thing of like, hey, Jesus loves you. Do you want a home? Do you want a community? And he started inviting people to this farm he was effectively building up in the mountains. And he did this for years. So for years, it was just a group of people who had nowhere to go. They were completely lost. And then someone offers them food, shelter, and friendship. And it was years of that before it became what it eventually turned into. And that's how people get indoctrinated to the point that they join and become a part of a cult. It's not just like, and I want to be abused by, some charismatic figure. But like Roche was... It was a very slow decline. The first step of it, I believe, is he started having them do labor. Like, okay, you go work and I'll stay here and run things. And people were like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's like, hey, do you care to help build like the houses around here? And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then it started to be like, I think I need to have children with the women here. And the single women were like, absolutely, yeah, I'm down for it. But then the husbands were like, hey, I could give my wife to this guy. So then he has all these children that are his. And then after, I think the cult, there was a period of time he went to jail and like every day, all of them would come to the jail and talk to him. He went to jail for like several months. I think the cult lasted for about 15 years. And by the end of it, there were so many violence scenarios that happened. But one of the more intense ones was a woman tried to run away after I think he had forced himself on her. I can't remember the scenario. But she tried to run away, and it was in the middle of Canada in the winter, so it was freezing. And these men brought her back, and he, in front of everyone, he dragged her onto, like, he had like a church set up. He dragged her to the altar, pulled a hatchet, and cut her arm off at the front of the room in front of everyone, and no one did anything. They were just like, yeah, she went against us. What else are we going to do? And, she's crying and screaming. And then he just puts down the axe and holds her and starts patting her like, shh, it's okay. And everyone was just like, yeah, this is fine.
This is what happens when you mess with the cult leader.
The thing that eventually did them in was a woman died during... It was something like she got sick or she got cut, and I forget the details, but Roche did something like he ordered someone to put a bag over her mouth or something like that. He ordered them to do something that got her killed. And then there was a period of time where they tried to hide her body, and then her family came looking for her, and eventually everything got found out. Oh, it was the woman who got her arm cut off. She escaped while the police were investigating, and she went to the police, told them what happened, and all of them got arrested. But yeah, these people were conditioned over the period of over a decade to be like, yeah, if he wants to cut her arm off, like, that's his right. That's what we get. And that's scary to read about, like situations like that where people are absolutely at the will of some madman.
And you have to remember like something else with it is like the longer someone is in a cult or in like one of those circles, the more like sunk cost is involved. And so like someone who's in a cult for 2 days is a lot more likely to be talked out of it. If you've been in there for years, like that is your life. Leaving that is not only changing your whole life and uprooting yourself, it's also an admission that you were fooled. And I don't remember who said it, but it's a lot easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. And so like you spend 5 years in a cult, like that's your fucking life. Like you're not going to let anything separate you from that because those are your friends. That's your family. So
what are we defining as cults? Like what how do you know it's a cult? Like someone tells you, hey, Taylor, look, I found myself. There's this group of people. They got a new way of doing things, and I like it. And for the first time in my life, I feel at peace. You know what? I'm leaving my job behind. I'm putting all my money into this. We all did. And look, hey, I am definitely not the richest guy there, buddy. I'm gonna tell you that right now. We're pulling a lot of money together so we can all just live in fucking harmony. And that's all there is to it. I mean, there's a guy in charge, yeah, and he takes a cut. But Father Michael keeps us together. He keeps us guided on the path of that God wanted us to be on, the one he originally wanted us to be on. You know what I mean? No owls. And it's a good place. Like, what do you say to this guy?
I mean, it's hard because like so much of like the cult part is the insistence on removal of yourself socially from your existing connections. So if you were inviting me and you were like, yeah, bring your family, bring your friends, like we meet up every week and we're going to hang out and we do this, I'd be like, okay, this isn't a cult. They're not trying to separate me from my life. If you were like, hey, you know, in addition to this, Taylor, I think you should come stay on this compound with me for a while. No, just you. I don't think your parents and your friends, I don't think they're bought in yet, honestly. Do you think they are? No, I don't think they're like you and I agree. But yeah, come on. Then I'd be like, okay, like this guy's trying to fucking put layers between me and the people I'm familiar with. This is a cult.
I've never seen anything like that. Honestly, I'm glad that I was never cool enough, I guess, to be invited to a cult.
I haven't been invited either.
Not even the Klan. Like I remember, my dad told me.
How many Klansmen are there? Like 13 FBI agents? like who the fuck is in the Klan in 2023?
Unironically,
my dad said that when they were all like, I don't know, 19 or 20, that the Klan would come around. He's like, they came around. Like they were in the back of a pickup truck with a loudspeaker.
Like a traveling show? Like
no, like
Barnum and Bailey's. Come one, come all. Well, but not really.
Yeah. They go around and let everybody know, hey, tonight we're going to be out over here. We're having a big meeting. And look, you don't have to join or anything. We just want you to hear us out. And like everybody went. He was like, we heard him out. Wasn't really for us, the hoods and such.
That'd be hilarious, like a sketch where like instead of a Mormon coming to your house, like it's a KKK guy, and you're like trying to be polite. You're like, I know, man. Yeah, sure. I'm in the middle of something right now. I'm so sorry. Like, can you not come back later ever? Like, or just lie and be like, oh, how can I help you today? Like, and then he'll leave. He'll be like, "Oh."
A few months ago, it got posted onto Facebook, I think, and it showed up. Like people were putting flyers up around town that said there was going to be a KKK rally in my county. They're like, the Klan's coming, and it's like, bring your kids, bring your friends, but we're having a grill out. Yeah, come just the one. But yeah, it was like, it's going to be in this county. It's going to be at this location, and like I saw it and I'm like, this is a troll. This is absolutely a troll. It has to be.
Yeah.
Even if the Klan was here, you don't put flyers up outside a Pizza Hut. Like, that's insane. But I was like, this is clearly a troll, but I'm excited to see what happens. And boy, did something happen. The sheriff had a speech, like in a small Tennessee county. The sheriff had like local papers come, and he was like, we do not support this kind of tolerance. Why, it's free speech. We stand against it. The judge put out a statement. What's like I'm going brain dead right now.
Comptroller.
President.
President of a county. What? Mayor. The mayor.
Mayor.
Yeah.
We got there.
we got it. Yeah. One piece at a time. Yeah. The mayor was like, they put out like a statement on Facebook that was like, we do not stand by this. This isn't a part of blah, blah, blah. And the day came it was the location that they had listed was by like a riverbank just out of town. And when the day came, pictures were going around on Facebook, like 200 pickup trucks with machine guns in the back of them. Like every good old boy in the county showed up. They were sitting on top of their Ford F-150s with an AR-15, like, let's see the Klan try to rally in our county. And they just stood out there for a few hours, then went home. It's all that happened.
That ain't the kind of shit we're for around these parts. Hey, feller, you take that.
Believe the Klan and they let Polacks in.
Feller, this ain't the kind of intolerance we're fond of around these parts.
Dude, I'm rewatching.
Me and my black wife are gonna have to ask you kindly to get the hell out of our town. And my beautiful little Miss Grace kids don't need your hate anywhere near our beautiful city here. In Whiteburg, Tennessee.
Whiteburg. We don't stand by the Klan.
No, we don't like it. You take your shit out of here. They're like ripping on Klans people for like not being real Southerners, not being real country people. This feller he ain't even on a farm.
You bunch of carpetbaggers coming down here, you can't wear that on a farm. It get too hot.
Feller, I got a feeling you're more of a 4chan shit poster than
that was literally me reading
your hands are looking mighty soft for a supposed man of the South.
I like the saying all hat, no cattle.
That is
all
a good
hat,
saying.
no cattle. That's good.
Yeah.
That's what the chicken farmer would be. All hat, no cattle.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, we had some cattle.
Right.
All hat,
cattle. I didn't do a lot of cattle stuff. I wanted to talk about the cult. I've been watching The Wire. No, well, okay, let's stay on cults. Yeah, actually, let's stay on cults. Did you have a cult?
I thought you had another cult question.
He did have a cult question that got cut off. Do you remember?
I was asking about how the money worked.
Good. Oh, for the anthill kids?
Yeah, well, in general, like, how do they get
just
people to give up their resources and give them to someone? So
it depends on the cult. Sometimes they'll have a few benefactors. Like sometimes they'll convince a couple rich guys, and that's where most of the money comes from. Sometimes, like, I don't think Waco was a cult to the degree people say it was, but it's definitely a cult in some
Branch
regard.
Davidians, eh?
Mm-hmm.
The Branch Davidians, yeah. The way that they did it is Koresh just stayed at the compound, but everyone worked in town, and there was
how I know it was a cult?
Fun. How's that?
Because they're called the Branch Davidians.
Correct.
As a kid, that rolls off the tongue on the newscast, and you don't ever stop to think about what it means. David Koresh leads the Davidians. You know what I mean? Like it's a cult. The real question about that is, were they sexually abusing children and fostering an environment in which that was to be normal and commonplace? Or did the FBI lie about that after they burnt all those children alive?
So from all the research, all the stories I've read on the topic, I do think the FBI fostered the story. There were several CPS investigations before all of that went down. They were never able to turn up any evidence, and everyone who was a part of it vehemently attested that didn't happen. That was.
I say it's 50-50. I'm 50-50 on it. Here's why. I just think, it just seems like historically, and from every example we ever have, whenever you have some dude who's running a cult, it's all about pussy, and it ends up being about underage pussy for some reason. We haven't been able to put our finger on that one here yet, despite all our study. Research expert Woody here, he's delved deep and hard, and he hasn't come up with
as deep as I can. I don't mean to brag.
Yeah, it hurts after a while. So, but I don't know what they were. I don't know if that was the case or not, but I'd say 50-50 it was, right? It just seems like it almost always that's what's going on. Even with like the good religions, the ones that we pretend aren't cults, it's like that's what's going on there too.
I'm going to balance that out. I'm going to say 0% chance they were doing that, and it was the FBI lying. So now the average is back. No, I have done no research. I have no idea.
Okay, so let me tell you about this. So here's what I saw on the news, and I don't know if this was the FBI being like, oh, look at what we found. It was like a kid's sort of informational pamphlet that you would hand to, like, I don't know, a kid to prepare them for their sexual life that's coming right around the corner.
Like your body's changing. Like that.
No, more like David's gonna fuck you.
That's true.
You may notice hair.
lucky.
You may notice hair where there wasn't hair before. You may notice a man named David walking into your room erect at night and demanding things of you. This is all part of becoming a woman. Like,
Yeah, so I saw those pamphlets on the news, and the only question is, like, if you could find out those were fake, I feel like that's the little piece of evidence that matters to me.
I looked into the pamphlets, and from every article I read, that was not evidence that was brought forward by any State Department. That was entirely mentioned by news sources and never backed by anything.
Yikes.
All the cult members said that. It's kind of like, you remember how after, like, well, I was too young to remember, but looking back, after 9/11, they were like, oh, and we found the hijacker's passport in the record.
Yeah.
Like that whole, like, no, you didn't. What are you talking about? Like, it was kind of like that. The news is like, hey, I know what we can do to be sensational for the next half hour.
Sure.
So from everything I read, that's
Where'd that pamphlet come from? Like, where'd it come from? Someone made that shit. Someone printed it off of a printer. Someone stapled it together. Someone drew those little stick figure children. You know what I mean? Someone wrote it.
Yeah.
And the only answer that comes to mind is that's the sort of thing that our government does sometimes when they're taking somebody down, like a political figure or something like that. They make those sorts of false evidences famously. Like if you look at the sort of things they were doing to Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or, even we talked about, it's people we don't like as well. It's not like they're just picking on civil rights leaders. Also like Fidel Castro, just all those Wile E. Coyote stunts they tried to pull, making his beard fall out, making him be on LSD during his speeches, all that craziness, kookiness. And the bad part is they kept failing somehow. Like, how did Fidel keep getting the best of us over and over? That had to be such an L.
Operation Mongoose, which was their operation to kill him or depower him or whatever, is the dumbest. So it's literally like they watched a Bugs Bunny cartoon and were like, we could do this. We could.
What is it?
Like, so it was an operation the CIA put together that was off the books for a while. The guy who headed it was, man, I forget his name. He's the same guy who headed Operation Wailing Soul, which is when they tried to convince the Vietnamese that there were ghosts in the jungle.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it was the same guy who ran that one.
Ridiculous country.
and the same guy who staged the vampire attack in the Philippines, which I made a video about.
Yeah, but that was his credit that he used to get that second.
Literally, that's the guy who they're like, he's got Castro in the bag. He'll be fine.
Castro, notoriously afraid of ghosts.
So the Operation Mongoose was essentially his series of plans to get rid of Castro. And some of the plans in there that they sent agents on to try to do was put exploding cigars in his cigar box. They tried to put poisonous pins in his house shoes so that he steps on attack and gets poisoned, or venom. They tried to sabotage the cattle in Cuba because Castro was famously a big fan of ice cream. So they were like, if we can get rid of ice cream, huge.
2 pints a night.
It literally
slim.
If we can get their plan was if we can get rid of ice cream, he's gonna fall apart. Like he'll fall apart at the seams.
He needs his ice cream.
They tried to poison his ice cream on multiple occasions. They tried to have his server like spike it with something. There was what Kyle said. They tried to spike his drink at meetings so he would go up to stage high.
Yeah. I did hear they painted a tunnel on a rock in front of the
that's what they were getting to.
And it was insane. Look, Fidel's limo approaches the rock they painted, and the CIA was over there watching, like, oh, we got him this time. Did you fucking believe it? He drove through the rock. And the CIA was like, all right, well, we can still get him, and they rushed to run through the rock as well. Bust their heads on it right there, fell on the ground. It was humiliating. It was
hoisted
humiliating
by their own petard.
That was the downfall of that weapon manufacturer. What was Acme?
Acme. Yeah.
They made terrible weapons.
They could never recover after that. Yeah, that was the reputation.
No,
but yeah, they tried to kill him in so many.
A pint of ice cream is roughly
never
800
worked.
calories. Like if he's eating vanilla ice cream, I think a pint's like 800 calories roughly. If it's full fat ice cream, and you got to imagine that 1960s shit is not skim milk. That ain't no oat ice cream. That's some full. That's double fat.
He must have been skimping on calories a lot of the day to afford
drinking too,
1,600
smoking those ciggies.
He was he a big
he had
drinker?
2 bowling balls in his belly.
that guy.
You
that
guys
guy
act
was,
like he stayed thin.
All the photos I remember of him are like young him with that
You know,
powerful
yeah,
beard.
we're remembering like
was-
the young picture. He probably got fat as hell.
Here's the thing, though. Remember how long he lived? Like he just died like
Yeah,
10,
he
12
died
years ago or
recently.
something.
No,
Raoul?
it was like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
But
I remember
Raul
it
had
happening.
taken over, I guess, maybe for a while.
Yes, yeah, Castro had been older to the side for a bit. Yeah, Raul
I'm
had
glad
been
we
running
opened that shit up. Like that's old business as far as I'm concerned. Like we should be able to get those cigars if they're actually any fucking good.
it. Yes,
Cigars
yeah.
suck, man.
There
They're
was
just they're gross. They just
I'm
don't
willing-
taste good. Have you ever like
All right.
every
I've
time you
told
start
my
a cigar, you're always feeling like I'm gonna feel classy, I'm gonna get it, and then you start it and you're thinking, I'm
I
in
like-
this for an hour.
I've told this whole story before, but like I got into cigars and because I got like a humidor and maybe some other like accessories for Christmas one year, and I had like I got a $300 lighter. Like we should probably buy a cigar. and so I got into them and I realized right away like the regular like I don't know kind of cigars that like dudes smoke on a golf course just make me lightheaded and taste like strong, thick, wet tobacco. But the ones I like were these cigarillos that were somewhere kind of like that shit Clint Eastwood would always be chewing on, like about that diameter. It's not a big fat cock that you're puffing on. It's just a little bit bigger than a cigarette, but it's brown wrapping and they're flavored. And I think it's more like a white guy Swisher Sweet, if I'm being honest. Like they were classy, they were like, you know, they were the flavors you'd get at a gas station.
Yeah.
But I think they probably actually used oranges in the ones I was
So you're
buying.
smoking wood tip wines.
What's the most serious crime that you could get away with because of method acting as a defense?
Shooting someone during a in the middle of a movie, killing
tell.
someone in a movie.
All right, let's just talk about that. So we didn't talk about last week. Alec Baldwin, they charged him with involuntary manslaughter, I
Insane.
believe. And like, in case you don't know, guy was making a movie. He's doing a rehearsal for a scene where he points a gun at somebody. He did so. Whether he needed to pull the trigger or not, he did. Real bullet in it. Killed her dead. She is dead. And somehow they found him to be somewhat culpable. They believe he is, you know, of involuntary manslaughter. And it just seems absurd to me. It seems so absurd. Like everything I've ever worked on, like, my God, it's so under. There's no bullets. Dude, there's no real bullets near the fake guns. And if there's going to be fake guns, they're treated like real guns. Like, but he's the actor. It's his job to hold that gun and use it like a prop. If it's handed to him, he's not supposed to. There are bullets in it, by the way, all the time. There were supposed to be bullets in it. Fake bullets. He has no way, unless maybe I could tell the difference if there's dimpled primers on a fake one, which is my guess. He would need to open the fucking chamber. I don't know if it's one that has a peaky kind of lever thing, so you see the backs of the shells and load them one at a time, or if it's got the thing where it like cantilevers out, the cylinder does. He would need to like look at the primers of bullets and be like, "Oh, something's amiss here." No, that it's so absurd that he's. Yeah. And I don't like that guy.
Ridiculous.
But
and he's like on set doing this every day, right? If every day I rent an airsoft gun from you and go play, right, and then on the 9th day you swap out my airsoft gun with a real gun, and they're otherwise identical, like I don't know.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing if you ask me. As the scenario you just described, where like. I was here to rent a toy. They gave me a gun. Like, how am I culpable for using my toy in a setting where it was meant to be used and someone lied and made it a gun? Like, it's I hope he's okay. I hope he doesn't get charged with that. It's a weird precedent to set. That if
It doesn't seem like he deserves to be charged for it. Like, I don't think he's very funny, but I don't think he murdered that woman. Yeah. Like, or manslaughtered her. Like,
I think he's a really good actor. I don't think I've really enjoyed anything he's done for like a couple decades, but I remember like that what is it? Hunt for the Red October, I think, where he's like he's the Jack Ryan character. Like he's the guy going aboard the nuclear submarine with his fucking hairy chest out. I remember all those movies he was in back then. The one where he comes in with the 2 balls and he talks to the salesman about like coffee is for closers.
Oh yeah, we killed that scene. Glenn
for like
Greenwald or something.
For like a decade, Alec Baldwin was one of the like best looking, sexiest, most talented actors on the planet. And you know, I didn't really enjoy like when he was shitting on Trump. You know why? Because he was good at it. because he was good at it. He's good at shitting on Trump. His Trump impression, excellent. He does the lip thing.
Yeah, he hit the voice pretty well. So credits due. Yeah, he does have a good Trump.
Yeah. So I feel bad.
We shouldn't have done this, but when we were on the movie set, we were working with blank guns while we were there, and there was a lot of the crew there who was from New York, never been around firearms before, and a lot of them were really skittish, you know, like, oh, okay, well, just the armorer touches them, and maybe a couple producers. We don't want, so they were nervous. And as soon as that started happening, we just started airdropping each other pictures of Alec Baldwin with no context.
Oh yeah.
So I'd be up there standing. We had like an M249 that we were doing a scene with, and I'm standing there with the armor talking over like how to do the shot, and I get a buzz and just look down and it's a picture of Alec Baldwin, and I just have to keep talking like nothing.
Yeah, you gotta be careful. Yeah, that's wild. I've never worked with like toy guns. It was always deadly stuff, so we always got the same like manner.
Your videos would have sucked with toy guns.
Yeah, we did some paintball videos. Those were fun. I watched one of my paintball videos the other day.
Today we are going to turn this fridge lime green from 46 feet away. Wow, isn't this great content?
But there was a bunch of times when I would be the guy there that was responsible for a bunch of guns and a bunch of bullets, and there would be at least 3 or 4 people there that are here to shoot them and have never shot a gun before. And like, that's, I've never done anything like that before. I don't have any range safety training. I've never really been to many ranges before that had rules. I've been shooting in a field my whole life. So that was fun to kind of learn on the fly to try to keep everybody safe and try to get that shit like filmed and everything. I'm glad this sparked my memory. Sierra Mist. You guys familiar with this soda, right?
Of course.
Yes.
You've been in rrestaurants, you're like, hey, give me a Sprite. Like, we have Sierra Mist. Is that okay? Of course.
Of course.
Always was. It always was. Never cared. Extant. It's gone. They replaced it.
There's no. What's it called now?
Something fucking stupid. It's like Sparkle or something. Starry. That's what it is. Starry. I kept seeing commercials for Starry, and I was like, "What's this bootleg off-brand nonsense?" Starry. It looked like a billionaire had been like, "I'm gonna take on Big Cola," and like made some ugly ass like yellow can. And the commercial was shit. It was just a can spinning. And it said Starry. Like
what?
I didn't even know what the fuck it was. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not that. I mean, Sierra Mist was never like
shit.
that incredible.
Look at that branding.
Like Sprite was better slightly.
It doesn't look modern, or maybe it does. I don't know.
It looks like it's a cartoon soda. It looks like this is what they drink in a Rick and Morty episode. Like this is Bart's favorite fucking soda.
This would be like
it has me curious. I want to
Slurm. It looks like Slurm.
Like Futurama. Yeah. Slurms McKenzie's gonna come in from the corner and start dancing and partying.
Dude, I'm not taking a sip of that shit. That's Slurm.
I saw this in a grocery store the other day, and it made me physically upset.
Yeah.
Just like, are you serious? Because I like Sierra Mist, but now it's just gone. It doesn't exist anymore, so that's cool.
Yeah, they don't have. You know what else doesn't exist? Surge. Is Surge around anywhere?
Remember Orbits?
I didn't have it.
Barely
remember.
remember.
You know what Orbits was? Orbits was this fruity beverage that had those little tapioca balls floating in it. They were like,
that sounds
nobody
amazing.
Nobody was. For somehow they were suspended equally throughout the solution of beverage.
Super amazing.
Show me a picture of Orbits, Zach. This is gonna blow everybody's mind. I bought a bottle of this when I was like
born too late.
I was like 8 or 9 or something like that. I remember we stopped at the gas station near Gumlock, and I got a bottle of this shit and immediately regretted it.
Damn it! I could have had a Sierra Mist.
I could have had a Dr. Pepper or something. Like it was one of those things where it's like, all right, kids, grab a soda. And like I picked that one. Dad was like, that thing's $3.50. You sure you want it? And I was like, yeah. And this is what I got. I got the white one, the one on the left.
That looks awful, man.
That looks terrific. It looks syrupy and sugary. Like suspended.
It was fruity, I think. I think it was like pineapple and coconut, maybe. Like that's my memory. Is it was something tropical.
That does look fun. That does look. I would enjoy an Orbits.
This was during the time of Zima as well, because I remember vividly that like Zima was being advertised in that gas station for whatever reason.
You could buy them on eBay right now. I wonder.
Unopened?
Yeah, they look unopened to me.
I only took a sip.
$20 for the drink and $17 for shipping. Whoa, this one's from 1997, unopened.
That would have been like the year probably.
Gross.
I remember when I went to Maine, they had blueberry soda, and apparently it's like a kind of rare thing that's only done up there. They make it the same way they do root beer. That's one of the most amazing drinks I've ever had. I bought like 48 of them to just crack them open for celebrations.
I mean, you know that rare drink is amazing, but I'll like the black cherry cola from, I think it's IBC.
Oh,
sure.
It's so sweet.
It is as good as anything ever made.
Yeah, IBC. I've got some IBC cream in my fridge.
It's
like every
so
2 years, I
tasty.
buy a 4-pack. It's 180 calories of soda, and I had one last night, and it was like, this was worth it. This is so good.
Like you take small sips because it's like it's like almost too rich of a beverage to guzzle like you would some other swill.
And that's a good point because like after I finished the one IBC cream soda, I wasn't like, oh, I wish I could drink like 3 more. It was like, no, I'm solid on sodas. Like, I'm bouncing back to diet sodas. You know, I'm not gonna
have some water after that.
And it comes out of a quality glass bottle, which adds to the experience.
It does.
Glass bottles are just so
got
much
that writing sort of engraved into the bottle, or
it's haptic. I don't know what it's not just.
It's not engraved.
The opposite of engraved. It's raised, and it's incredible.
Yeah,
It's
raised,
molded into it or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the old timey feel. I tell you though, like Virgil's makes
pretty
a
good.
tremendous. Here's what I like about them. It's just as much about the presentation as the root beer. To me, it's the best root beer I've ever had. They come in like that 1 liter cantilever bottle, but I remember it said something about the Bavarian nutmeg that was an ingredient like on the bottle, and I was like, "Fucking sold!" But when you open it, it's like it's this old timey thing.
I tried to mute it.
You're like a pirate that you just found some old bottle, like, and when you like flick that cantilever top, it, boop, you're like, holy shit, we just opened something up. And it's such a big bottle. You
Dom
have to pour it.
Perignon.
It's such it feels fancy. That's my favorite root beer. But Woody's right. That like black cherry IBC shit that's at the grocery store is just so sugary sweet. We got Old Soaker.
Old Soaker blueberry soda.
Blueberry soda. Yeah, I found it.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Holy
forgot I had
shit.
a bottle up there. This stuff's incredible, and it's only made in Maine apparently at Bar Harbor. It's so good.
I
have
never
to
had
go
a
back.
blueberry soda.
It's
I would
neither
totally-
did I until I went to Bar Harbor. It was great. It was a magical little land I visited for a short amount of time where the blueberries make soda.
There's like artisan sodas, especially cream soda and root beer specifically. You know, I personally hold those in a higher esteem than sort of the meme sodas that you see, where it's like Mike's Hard Lemonade Soda, and it's like, fuck you, I'm taking up space where there could be cream soda, you know, idiot. But like, I love it. There's this like this grocery store that it's called Straub's here, and it is like the richest rich person grocery store. I haven't been in one in years, but it's like expensive as fuck, very artisan. And I remember like they had a whole aisle that like was nothing but individual artisan sodas. Like it was a small little place, but it was an entire aisle of it, and it was brands you could like you could go to 50 other stores and never find them, and like little like Leninade, like little jokey ones like that, like Vladimir Lenin on there with like a Leninade, you know, soda, like those kind of things. But like they had the haha bullshit ones where it's like, you're not going to get me with that. I know that's a meme. That soda's not going to be good. But then they had like all the real ones and like the IBC and Virgil's adjacent ones.
You're not tempted,
and
by
it was
those
great.
sodas? I am. like all right, IBC.
I want to try Leninade.
Outstanding, but I could, in theory, get that anytime I wanted. I see like sour cabbage soda. All right, that sounds horrible, but this is my only opportunity to try sour cabbage. I'll never see it again.
Someone's gotta like it. Someone
I know
out there
what you
has to
mean.
be into this. Yeah.
I remember like at Disney World when I was maybe 11, for some reason they had like, maybe it was Epcot, they had like a jerky stand, like Jerky World. And in my head, it was like, I've had beef jerky and deer jerky. That's what jerky is. And they had alligator jerky, ostrich jerky. And like, I was like, as a, 10-year-old, like I was like really excited at the prospect of like getting to eat these different kinds of animals. And so I got some alligator jerky, and like, so immediately I was like, oh, I've been had. Like it tastes exactly the same. It's just tough meat with doused in seasoning. It wasn't different enough for me to like get excited.
It was real
about
alligator.
It was real alligator, and like the part of it that like excited me was like I'm eating something cool. Like I'm eating something that's hardcore and that like eats other things.
Yeah, I'm top of the food chain now.
I'm top of the food. Well,
the
literally,
8-year-old eating an alligator.
And it was probably like a baby
Ooh,
farmed alligator. Ooh,
Cherry cola.
Who's that? Fentimans?
This is Fentimans.
Fentimans cherry cola. Is that like an elixir from a age gone by? What is that?
Looks like a cured jaundice or something.
My name is Jeremiah Pendleton. You must try my elixir. It'll take a week to work, and by that time I'll be 100 miles from here.
I bought it purely because of the dog logo.
Have you tried one yet, or did you buy a one-off?
Yeah, they're pretty awful. there's only you know the first fucking sign that this is gonna be shit. It's got 90 goddamn calories in it.
Is that a plastic bottle too?
No, it's glass, but with a twist off, right? It's like
that's what made me think it was plastic.
This has got to be a lot cheaper than the.
That's
I don't
fine,
know.
as
Maybe
long
this
as
is
it's
more
glass.
expensive. I would think this is a more expensive process than the traditional crimping thing. Silly subs aside, what is the airline that you always prefer, and what is the airline that you will never fuck with again?
I don't think I'll fuck with United anymore. I've had it. I just have a bad luck with getting like delayed with them, and I've had great luck with Delta, and like I haven't flown like since the Southwest thing. But honestly, Delta and Southwest, I've never had an issue with either of them.
So I will always go Delta. The only thing that would keep me out of a Delta plane would be if it's like one of those little short hops that you got to do sometimes. It's, oh God, it's a 25-minute flight. Like we can't those. Or if it's international, they just don't go. But it seems like Delta does everything. The only time I've had to stray was I took Virgin once from Seattle to LA because Delta doesn't do that trip, and Virgin does. And Virgin's probably the best airline if I'm being honest. But they're like one of those things where you're paying like 30% more and getting like, I don't know, 10% better service than Delta. I love Delta. I'll always go Delta. I will never fuck with United, ever.
Really?
They're so shitty. Like some of the things they've done. Remember, they're the ones who drug that older Asian ER doctor off, beat him bloody, and drug him off the plane, because he didn't want to surrender the seat that he was occupying, that he had paid for. And the reason they wanted his seat, we're trying to send some United employees to Kentucky. Why did you want to go to Kentucky, sir? And he's like, my patients. And they beat him bloody and drug him off the plane. He got paid. And then there's the famous story of that guy whose guitars, he's watching his guitars being damaged as they're loaded on the plane. He's like, hey, my guitars, no. And they're like, fuck it. He gets there. Sure enough, they were his guitars. Very valuable guitars, ruined. After exhausting every other avenue, what does he do? Makes a YouTube video called United Breaks Guitars.
Yes.
United Breaks Guitars. It's excellent. It's like he spent some money to make this, and it I think it's around 20 million views these days, probably.
They should have paid for his guitar.
They eventually did. And but little things like that alone, when I see that, I'm like, I'm with you.
Good
bro.
for that
Like,
guy.
Like they broke your guitar, like fuck them. Delta's so cool. Delta lost one of Kitty's bags one time. This is when we lived 2.5 hours from the Atlanta airport. They're like, we don't have your bag, and so we go home. The next day, they're like, we have your bag. It's made it here from Chicago. We're gonna drive it to you. It'll be there in 2.5 hours. And they sent some asshole out in a little car with her bag, and he knocks on the door. I says, I'm very sorry. Here's some fucking vouchers for whatever the fuck, and here's your bag. And I was blown away by that level of like.
I know a little bit about
service.
that. I had a coworker back when I was a young programmer, and this guy was my senior programmer I worked with, who previously loaded and unloaded bags onto airplanes as his job. And what happened was, at the end of the day, there were like a bunch of lost bags, and they would get paid like, hey, this one's not far from your house, a little 15-minute journey outside of your way. Drop this bag off at the dude's house, and we'll give you, it was like $30, $50 or something. But he's like, yeah, you do 3 of those, you end up working an extra 40 minutes, and you pick up, nearly half your pay over again. And that's how that system worked.
Yeah, so those Delta to me, like if anybody's, I don't know, if you're new to flying, like I guess every now and then somebody's like getting to the age where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna start flying places. How do you pick your brand, right? I guess you'd have to do a bunch of market research. Just go Delta. Just go Delta. Especially in the Southeast, there's no reason to go anywhere else.
You're probably right. I think Delta has a hub in Atlanta. So they seem better to you than they might seem if you live in Raleigh.
Yeah.
I just choose by price and the time.
Have you ever done front?
I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask if you've ever done Spirit's business model.
When I was young, I've done Spirit. I've done Spirit in Southwest, but mostly I fly first class, and I just pick it on price and the time of day, and that's it.
People give Spirit a hard time because they feel like they're getting hit with hidden fees, and they don't understand the business model. There aren't any hidden fees. What they sell you is what they do is they make every little bit of air travel itemized so that you can pick the specific ones that you want to get. And if your only concern is price, they'll allow you to just buy, pay attention to the words here, a seat on the plane. Not the seat on the plane, a seat. If you want to pick your seat, that's extra. Want to print out your boarding pass? That's extra too. Want to bring a bag of any kind? That's extra. Both kinds, like carry-ons cost.
Carry-on costs extra?
Yes, everything. And their CEO had this quote. He's like, "Why wouldn't I pack as many seats as possible onto a DC-10 or whatever they fly?" It's not the, I can't remember the plane they fly. Those
AC-130. Let's go with it.
Yeah, they're those. Yeah. The AC-130s that Spirit.
We're going to Nam, boys.
I saw a picture of the leg room. That leg room was abominable. Like it wouldn't work for a man. Like it looked like children should be in there, like school bus seats.
This sounds like bullshit rationalization, but I've always had issues with air sickness, and in first class, I don't have that problem really. Like it's just a better experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're not as cramped in.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the drinks and the waitress who's there for you all the time. Maybe whatever. It's just better.
I like that hot towel.
Yeah, I don't know if I always get a hot towel. I usually get hot nuts. Somehow that's
Delta won't do peanuts.
I don't know.
That's the other reason I fly them.
They might be cashews there. That'll come back. But yeah, they serve you like warmed nuts, and I'm like, this is actually kind of a cool snack. I will not fuck with United though. That sounds scary. Delta lost my shit one time, but they got it back to me. That's the other thing. Like when they have fucked up, which you just assume is eventually going to happen. It's crazy that there's a system that allows that many people in bags to get to the right place most of the time anyway. Mm-hmm. Anytime I see my bags come out of that carousel, I'm like, oh, it made it again. How did it happen? Wow. When they lose my bags, they're so lost. Like when I was in Mexico, it's like, where are my bags now? Like, I don't know, New Brunswick. Why did they even go that way? Like, that's not on the way from North Carolina to Mexico. Like, oh,
Well, tell them to come back.
Yeah, but they got to me eventually. It was an issue, but whatever. It was an adventure trip. That's just different adventure than I expected.
That's the original potato chip flavor, you know. Not salt, but salt and vinegar.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
So that
I didn't either.
Original.
I just kind of made it up.
You got me this time.
God damn it, dude! Yeah.
Did he have you, Taylor, or was it just me?
No, he got me on that one.
Oh,
Like,
good.
because
it's preservatives.
Yeah, maybe
had to keep those potatoes fresh.
It did make sense to me.
It still makes sense. It might be true.
Damn it, you got me on that one. I was about to ask a follow-up about
that sounds like an 1800 snack. It's like, well, we'll just dry it out, then dip it in vinegar and put some salt on it, and there you go. You've got
I probably guessed right.
We've had a long afternoon of being racist. Time for a snack.
We've had a long afternoon.
Why aren't more things salt and vinegar flavored? Like I would like salt and vinegar flavored like baked potato. I guess I just need to put some vinegar on my baked potato, huh?
Put some salt on it, yeah.
You think that would do the trick?
Here's the trick. You can put salt and vinegar on anything. It's not
where do you
illegal.
get
They
it?
can't stop you.
You can like get the
Kyle,
powder.
you're
You
gonna
mean?
love this. Is salt and vinegar is a real thing.
Yeah.
You get like
You
you get
can
like
take-
so like it's like the Dorito nacho cheese powder. You get like salt and vinegar powder and put it on something.
I hear you with the
I'm sure.
vinegar.
I don't
But
know
what if
what
you
you
put
do.
pickle juice on more things?
There you go. That's just vinegar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's better than vinegar. It's pickle juice.
It's pickly vinegar. Brine.
They make those. They make dill pickle potato chips.
They do. They're pretty good.
Yeah, but I'm thinking baked potatoes, sandwiches.
Yeah, I mean you can just buy a big jar of juice, like I'm sure you have in your refrigerator.
flavored
That I know your
potato
wife
sounds
like
like a
does
problem.
this to all of your sandwiches
Oh.
with.
Pickle
God knows
flavored
what's
potato
growing in that
chips
jar.
are tremendous.
You know what's happening?
Love
The
them.
chips, yeah. The chips, yeah.
I have the same thing for lunch. Like, must be 360 days a year. I have the same thing for lunch, and
It's that like grilled chicken little flatbread thing, huh?
yeah, it's this lavish recipe we got on YouTube for grilled chicken thing, and she's replaced the pickles with relish. And oh my god, what an upgrade! First of all, it's like basically bread and butter pickles, but also the little relish juice spreads all over the place. Everybody.
Ну чё ж, кура цела уже неплохо, а? Вон, вон.
It's a delight.
Do you
She's revolutionized the chicken lavish game.
What I like pickles as well, but if I'm having like a sandwich instead of like at a deli, instead of like pickles on the sandwich, I really enjoy the whole spear that I get on the side, and I can like punctuate the bites I want with the pickle. I like that very much.
That's
Are you
me
a
now.
solid a pickle stick guy? I'm a big pickle stick guy.
I used to, it's a spear first of all, and
Yeah.
and
Well,
second of all-
I guess I'm not that big of a pickle stick
Get your
guy.
mouth right.
yeah, they're pickle stick. Pickle stick?
Yeah.
What the fuck planet?
They
are
call
you?
them
That's what a
cucumber legs.
caveman. That's what a caveman would call a pickle if he was learning English very fast. And we were all scientists were like, "Yeah,
Fine,
it's amazing.
Zach-
It's been a week.
Zach,
Can I
remove
have
the last
pickle
30
stick?"
seconds.
Look, you can't know what a pickle spear is. Look at him. He's a fucking caveman.
But yeah,
so he
pickle
just learned
spears are the way
English
to
Taylor,
so
hear
that's
me out. What if
acceptable.
instead of
Let's not razz
slicing
him.
pickle into spears, you just sort of licked the outside of the entire pickle? You could put it in your mouth, suck on it like a popsicle.
I'm a
That
texture
gets you-
guy. I need the crunch. I understand you're a vinegar guy, but
I think that would
everybody's
get you
vinegar
kicked
guys,
out of Panera. Sure.
it would. If you make eye contact to the cashier and throat, but you're not good at it, and you're going,
You're getting asked
your
to
pickle
leave.
spear? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
you know what they'll say is, sir, we're going to call the police if you try this again. And I'll say, you don't know who I am, and I'm wearing a clown wig and sunglasses because I do it every day. It's like, sir, you
can't
pay
keep
by
doing
card
this.
every day.
I don't do dill pickles anymore,
Taylor,
though.
we have
I-
your name.
We
It's
have
right
your
here. Okay.
We thought you'd
But
be a
you
girl.
play these games.
Well, this is very confusing for me. Like,
accents as you're talking.
Just change 'em up.
Yeah.
I have to go to the bathroom, and I just come out with like an extra ring on as a different guy.
I like those wickles.
What's a wickle?
A wickle? It's a I don't know. It's a pickle they charge you $6 a jar for. I don't know. They're like sweet and spicy pickles. Yeah,
That sounds like a slur.
It's a wickle.
It does.
Yeah, you wickles, get out! I got my windows open. Get your wickle ass out of
I'm
here.
gonna Google it to see if this is a real thing. It's a real
Tie
thing.
your shoes.
That's all. Yeah.
Tie your shoestrings, you dirty wickles.
This is one of the oldest
That's the thing.
pickle companies
They
out
walk
there.
around with their sneakers untied.
Dude,
I was like, he can't get me twice in 2 minutes.
Started in 1906 by Jeremiah Wickle. Wickle's Pickles is the pride of the South and your pantry. It's
Jeremiah
almost
Wickle,
100
that's
years in the making.
That's one of
Goddamn
those
right.
names. That's like you were saying earlier, like Jebediah Barzal, whatever.
Yeah.
What was it?
Jeremiah Wickle.
No
Yeah.
way.
You're right. I did make that up. There is not a Jeremiah Wickle from Wickle's Pickles. But the rest of what I read is true.
This podcast is full of lies and misinformation.
I'll say this. Look, if you want
Most
some,
of it's wrong.
if you want some tasty
can't do
pickles,
this.
the Wickles are the way to go. And if you like mayonnaise, then Duke's mayonnaise is the way to go. I have very strong opinions about a lot of things, and those two things are just true. Anyone who eats anything else is just wrong.
Wait, what was that second part?
Duke's mayonnaise.
I don't eat white condiments.
First of all, I don't eat much mayonnaise.
I'm pretty
Ever.
progressive.
However, if I had my way, I could eat it by the spoonful. I fucking love mayonnaise. I could dip French fries in it and be happy. Like on my grilled cheese, I want mayonnaise inside and out that motherfucker. I want it on the outside because it browns it up. I want the inside because that's how Mama makes them. They're fucking delicious. It's not though. She'd be mad if I described her sandwiches that way. That's why I do. Yeah, she put mayonnaise in them. She don't know
What's
how to cook.
your
служивый!
Ублюдок, мать твою, а ну иди сюда, говно собачье! Решил ко мне лезть.
Yeah, seems about right. You can see me, I can see you.
Вон он упырь!
You can see me, but I can't see you.
Да вот он!
Baba. Are you? Are.
Вали кепку! Да вот, вот он!
Oh my god, can you stop?
Не, блядь!
Fucking Christ. I'm on single fire. I'm on single. Yeah. I'm on single fire again. Again, I'm on single fire. Killed me again. It's killed me 3 times now. Why does this always happen? Three times now I've died to single fire. Single fire. Single file. Single file. This is so fucking bad. Oh my god. Oh, no, back. I can't even fucking see Gears.
What's your, if you're getting a burger, what's your burger toppings, Wendigoon?
If it,
Back out again. I had a preset, and I don't know if those preset has the keys.
So recently, I was spending quite a lot of time longingly looking at the Steam Deck store page, hoping that one might magically pop into existence. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, so I had to commit to buying one instead. Fast forward a little while, and I've now been the proud owner of a Steam Deck OLED for a couple of months, and honestly, it's deserving of the hype. The fact that a handheld is capable of running a lot of modern high-end games at this level of quality is absolutely crazy, but something I wasn't really expecting was how much I was going to be using this as an emulation device. So if you're like I was and you're kind of on the fence about getting a Steam Deck, let me talk you through what you can achieve when it comes to retro game emulation with this, and what the advantages of using this are over the many smaller, more pocketable devices on the market. If you're a fan of the Steam Deck and its awesome portability, then check out our book, A Handheld History, which not only covers retro portable systems, but even brings you up to the present day with the rise of handheld PCs. It's available on Amazon and in retail stores, so check it out if you're looking for a new gaming book to add to your shelf. Now, when you first get your deck, it obviously isn't capable of running any games from any systems other than the PC. Luckily, it's a super easy process to set up emulators and get started though, thanks to a piece of software called EmuDeck. This allows you to very easily install basically every emulator you need to play any retro systems on your Steam Deck, and it even auto-configures them to their optimal settings based on the deck's hardware. It also guides you through the process of transferring your ROM files and gives you access to several extras, like whether you want the autosave feature, bezel artwork, and what your preferred aspect ratio is. I would highly recommend that you get a micro SD card to put all of your ROMs onto, because it keeps everything organised with your Steam files being completely separate from your emulation files, and that way you won't be taking up any space on your deck's SSD. Now, if you did want to go into the individual emulators and adjust advanced settings yourself, you can still do that by launching the emulator through desktop mode or by accessing the quick menu during gameplay, but for the most part you probably aren't going to need to do this because EmuDeck does such a good job setting everything up. I think the only system I dramatically altered in any way was with the PS2 emulator, where the default resolution was set to native. So I increased this to a 2x upscale just to get things looking a little bit nicer. The other thing to bear in mind is that in order to actually transfer ROMs to your Steam Deck, you're going to need an additional storage device like a USB drive with both a USB-C and A output, or have access to a Steam Deck dock to plug in any standard USB storage. This is because the micro SD card inside the deck will be formatted and become unreadable by a Windows PC, meaning that you'll need a separate device to act as a middleman between your PC where your ROMs are stored and the Steam Deck itself. Of course, this only applies if you are actually transferring files between a PC and the Steam Deck, but I'm assuming that that's what most people will be doing. Even with this slight hurdle though, this is still by far the most streamlined and user-friendly experience that I've ever had with emulation, and the fact that EmuDeck just downloads and configures everything for you makes it feel like this is something that the Steam Deck is actually supposed to be able to do officially. This is going to make it so much easier for newcomers to be able to get into the emulation scene, and I just think that that's awesome. The last thing that EmuDeck will customize for you is the appearance of something called Emulation Station. This is the other main piece of software you're going to want to familiarize yourself with, because this is probably what you'll be launching through Steam to actually boot up your games. I picked the modern theme for this because it was the most sleek looking and kind of replicates the Switch's minimal UI, which gives it a more console-like vibe. If you don't want to use Emulation Station to access your games, you can actually create shortcuts for emulators or even individual games by launching EmuDeck and accessing the Steam ROM Manager. Personally though, I like to keep things really minimal in my actual Steam library, so I just have Emulation Station here, and I launch my games through that. The final annoyance with this process is that you'll probably find that with certain systems, you're encountering some kind of error or limited functionality. For example, when you're playing a 3DS game, sometimes it'll ask if you have a Mii character available, and of course, you probably don't, because by default, you can't access the Mii Maker on the emulator. So you'll need to download the Mii Maker as its own app and launch it as if it was a ROM. However, you'll probably then encounter a second issue where the Mii's face textures are missing, and this is seemingly because the 3DS emulator doesn't automatically have all of the system files used for the 3DS default system apps. So you'll need to source these yourself, transfer them over to the emulator folder manually, and then finally you'll be able to make Mii's as much as you want. There's a lot of little things like this which you'll probably need to work around to get the most out of the emulation. For example, PS3 emulation straight up won't work without
Are you kidding me? Why? Are you kidding? Yes, Greg. Yeah? Sure felt like it. Sure felt like it. I'm a fucking rock guy. mean, bro, honestly, like, what the fuck do I really fucking lose? You in armor? Booga booga booga. Guess who's here for the 5th time? take one fucking win, dude. I'll take that.
A system update file, and certain DS, PS1 and PS2 games will require a BIOS file to function. It's unfortunate that some of these emulators aren't quite as simple as clicking on a game and having them work straight away. But a lot of the time the reason for this is because of it technically being illegal to distribute certain system files online. So for now there's very little that can actually be done to rectify this. But now that we've finally got everything set up, let's take a closer up look at how the Steam Deck is better than a lot of other emulation devices. It would be a crime if we went any further in this video without talking about the quality of this screen. Because of the OLED display, any games you're playing on here are really gonna pop, and this is easily the best looking display I've ever personally seen on a handheld device. That's high praise, I know, but it's just that impressive. You've also got the added advantage of it being a massive 7.4 inches, which means it's easier to get immersed, and because the resolution is 1280 by 800, which is an aspect ratio of 16 by 10, you don't actually have as much of a black space on the sides of the screen when you're playing 4x3 games as you would have with a 16 by 9 display. You wouldn't think that this would make that much of a difference, but playing non-widescreen games on the deck just looks phenomenal due to how well the space is being utilised. Another huge advantage the Steam Deck has over literally every other handheld I've used is the fact it's so goddamn comfortable. It's got some weight to it so that it feels premium, but not so much that it ever feels awkward to hold. The grips on the back make it fit nicely in the hands, and it has more inputs than you're ever realistically gonna need. You've got all of the standard buttons that a normal controller has, but then on top of that you've got 2 trackpads and 4 back paddles, which are extremely useful for emulator shortcuts, allowing you to do stuff like quickly access save states, swap displays on any dual screen systems, fast forward, or anything else you want to assign to them. The trigger and shoulder buttons are stacked just like they would be on a full-sized controller, and the triggers are even analog, which makes them perfect for any games that use pressure-sensitive inputs like Super Mario Sunshine and a lot of other GameCube games. Because you can also dock the Steam Deck to connect it to a bigger display and attach controllers to it, it can basically act as a full-on home console, and it allows you to easily dive into any multiplayer games too. On the software side of things, the deck has some functionality that I've never encountered on an emulation device before. It's got specific controller profiles which you can view and modify for each of the main emulators, and the performance overlays which you can bring up in standard PC games are also perfectly functional when emulating. This gives you a much more seamless way of viewing your frame rate, CPU usage, and other statistics without having to go into the settings of each individual emulator. Little quality of life elements like this all add up, and it makes the Steam Deck easily the single best emulation device I've ever used in terms of practicality. It's just so much more streamlined and consistent than anything else I've ever encountered. But now, let's crack on with some game testing and see what the Steam Deck is capable of in terms of performance and what systems it's actually able to play. As you're probably well aware, any systems up to and including the Dreamcast are gonna not only run flawlessly, but run upscaled way beyond their normal resolutions. The Steam Deck's display is only 800p, so upscaling beyond that is a little bit unnecessary. But even going as high as that makes some of these older games look amazing, and you really don't need to take them beyond that, especially on a handheld. Atari 2600, NES, SNES, N64, PS1, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Dreamcast, and any similarly powered consoles are gonna run with no problems. The more demanding systems from the 6th generation, such as the PS2 and GameCube, will also run perfectly. Even upscaled to 720p, PS2 games like Metal Gear Solid 3, Ratchet & Clank, and Grand Theft Auto 3 performed exactly as they would on real hardware. On the GameCube side of things, Super Mario Sunshine, Mario Kart Double Dash, and F-Zero GX all performed with little to no hiccups. Everything was running like butter on a hot summer's day. Wii games also ran great, although because of the variety of controller types offered by this system, it can require a bit more tinkering with different input profiles to get everything running as intended. But with enough perseverance, it once again works incredibly well. Thanks to the Steam Deck's massive display and its touchscreen functionality, DS and 3DS games play great here too. 3DS could even be upscaled to a 3 times resolution, and even demanding games like Super Mario 3D Land, which normally struggles on other devices, ran with only tiny occasional stutters. But let's move beyond what we would normally test on handheld devices, because the Steam Deck is even capable of playing PS3 and Wii U games. PS3 emulation isn't quite at a stage where it's easy to get games functioning to the full potential, but even so, some games like Demon's Souls and Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction ran extremely well. You can even apply patches to certain games which make them run at a higher frame rate than they did on the original hardware, and doing that really brings these games up to a modern standard. I was particularly impressed with the performance I was getting from Wii U games. Literally everything I tested ran almost flawlessly, from Mario Kart 8, Wind Waker HD, Super Mario 3D World, and even Breath of the Wild. Although this particular game does require you to apply a frame rate hack from the main emulator menu to get the most out of it. But the fact that the deck can play games from such a recently released system this well is absolutely crazy. It really goes to show just how versatile the system is. An area of the Steam Deck I was actually expecting to be disappointed by was the battery life. I know a lot of other reviewers have complained about this quite a lot in the past, and it seemed to be one of the only majorly negative things people were talking about. However, despite this bad reputation when it comes to battery life, I was extremely happy with the results I was getting when emulating. Do bear in mind though that the battery life is better with the OLED model of the Steam Deck as opposed to the LCD models, so this will vary depending on which version of the deck you have. With a full charge of battery you can get between 9 to 10 hours out of games up to the PS1 and N64. For the PS2 and GameCube era you can expect to get between 6 and 7 hours, and for PS3 and Wii U, you're looking at around 3 to 4 hours. Now personally, I think that's some impressive battery life that's easily on par with, if not better than, a lot of the other handhelds that I've reviewed. So, would I recommend a Steam Deck for its emulation potential? Well, if you've got this far in the video, then you probably know that the answer is a resounding yes. It's the single best handheld I've ever used for emulation, and it blows practically every other device out of the water. There's only really 3 reasons I can ever see myself using another device for emulation. The first reason is if there's a handheld that's specifically suited to a particular system, like with the Powkiddy RGB30 and its square screen, which makes it great for Game Boy. The second reason is if I needed something significantly smaller and more pocket-friendly for if I'm traveling light. And the third and final reason is if I wanted something that could play original cartridges like the Analog Pocket.
Time to see where I get.
Ёп, граната!
Outside of those very specific situations though, the Steam Deck is practically unbeatable. The process of transferring the ROMs and doing the initial setup with additional files required for certain emulators is a bit cumbersome, but this isn't the fault of the deck itself, but the way that the emulators themselves function. And even with those minor hurdles to overcome, EmuDeck does an amazing job at automatically configuring things to suit the Steam Deck's hardware. And this means that the amount of tinkering you need to do is always kept to as much of a minimum as it can be. Despite the overall focus of the Steam Deck clearly being on playing PC games, it's hard to deny that it's easily one of the single best handhelds for emulation. The display is huge and the colours are stunning thanks to the OLED screen. It fits in your hands perfectly and is just as comfortable as using a proper controller. All of the extra inputs with the touch panels and the back bumpers give the device so much additional functionality, and the power on offer here allows the Steam Deck to go up to consoles way way beyond most other handhelds. The obvious barrier to entry is the price, with the 1TB OLED model going for £569 or $649, which is an extremely expensive purchase. But you can also go for the £349 or $399 256GB LCD model, which knocks a massive chunk off of the price. But obviously this does lack some of the fancier features of the OLED models. Whichever of these you're interested in, I honestly think it's more than worth the price. Not only for the absolutely insane emulation capabilities, but the fact it's also a full-on handheld PC which is capable of running games through Steam. The amount of versatility the Steam Deck offers is crazy, and after 2 months of owning one, I think this could be my favourite handheld device ever made. But what do you think? Have you tried out emulation on the Steam Deck, and if so, were you as blown away by the results as me? Or has this video tempted you to try it out for the first time? Let me know. As always, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more retro content coming very, very soon, check out A Handheld History, now available on Amazon, and I've been Rob from Retro Dodo, and I'll see you in the next one.
If you're invested in the comedy scene, there's a good chance you've heard of Bert Kreischer. Having been in the entertainment business for well over 2 decades now, it's hard to find many comedians who can claim to have found his level of success, as he's tried everything from stand-up to podcasting, and even acting in major Hollywood productions. A socialite by nature, Bert has spent his career cruising his way to success, utilizing his network of connections in the show business, from his friendship with Joe Rogan, to being taken under the wing of Will Smith, to many others. However, for all of the glamour and all of the money, Bert's career has been taking a bit of a downward spiral recently. From his excessive lying to his hugely inflated ego, Bert has been hemorrhaging support in the last year and beyond, and while he maintains a solid presence in the world of comedy, much of his success on YouTube has been in steady decline. But how did it come to this? How does one go from being a titan in the industry to a complete joke to most, apart from the shrinking pool of his diehard fans? Let's explore that. Bert Kreischer, born Albert Kreischer Jr., was born on the 3rd of November 1972 in St. Petersburg, Florida. His family moved to Tampa soon after his birth, where Bert would spend his formative years. Unlike many other notable comedians, Bert had a pretty stable childhood, with his father working as a real estate lawyer and his mother working in early childhood development, which meant they could live fairly comfortably, eventually going to a private Jesuit high school. This very comfortable lifestyle would continue into his college years at Florida State University, where he never seemed driven to actually accomplish much of anything. And as a member of the Alpha Tau Omega fraternity house, he ended up spending most of his time partying, as well as developing his lifelong habit of drinking. Bert would spend 6 years at the university, majoring in English. Throughout his long college tenure, he managed to get a bachelor's degree in the subject, which, if you know anything about how college works, it took him 2 years longer than it usually takes. Over time, he garnered a bit of a reputation on campus for his partying antics. To most people, Bert Kreischer would have seemed like nothing more than a college frat boy setting himself up for failure due to sheer laziness and arrogance, likely nursed by his comfy upbringing. What no one could have expected, however, is that it was this persona that would eventually set him up for life. In 1997, after Florida State University had been declared the #1 party school in the entire US of A, the popular magazine Rolling Stone decided to write an article about the university in order to explore this world-famous party culture. We can't know the exact intentions of the writers prior to entering school grounds, but what we can say for sure is that for all of the things they could have discussed in regards to FSU's party culture, the one thing that most caught the interest of journalists was none other than Bert. Pretty much the entire article narrows its focus on him, discussing in detail the kind of life he led at this university. They described the kind of person he was, his jovial, easygoing nature, his shirking of responsibilities. They mentioned how he could never stop cracking lighthearted jokes and laughing just about constantly. In fact, the article went as far as to call him the funniest guy to have ever attended the university. They mentioned how he had run for office of his fraternity twice, first time making a speech in the nude, losing, and then a second time foregoing a speech entirely and taking in a pizza box, which earned him a victory. For most, this kind of article would have been a personal embarrassment at best, and potentially life-ruining at worst. But as we'll find out very quickly, this didn't really concern Bert in the least, as a much different path in life had now opened up to him. The article quickly caught the eye of the masses, and Bert practically became an overnight sensation. His crazy story captivated the hearts of the general public, and perhaps more importantly, the eyes of Hollywood, as the movie director Oliver Stone expressed interest in turning it into an actual film. But negotiations eventually fell through, and the scriptwriters involved were sent home. One of these scriptwriters changed Bert's name and then sold the script to National Lampoon, which turned it into National Lampoon's Van Wilder, starring Ryan Reynolds, apparently without any involvement from Bert at all. Following his 15 minutes of fame garnered from the Rolling Stone article, Burt was given an opportunity to perform a stand-up in a club in Tallahassee called Potbellies. The recordings of his stand-up are not available online, but from what Burt himself recalls, his stand-up lasted 30 minutes and was good enough to entertain everyone present. Following his relative success, Burt took the tape from the stand-up and ended up sending it to Jason Steinberg, who, while seemingly not impressed, invited him up to New York City to watch some stand-up shows, while he would work the door at the Boston Comedy Club, and where he could occasionally get an open mic. The historical record gets a tad murky after this, but what we do know is that at some point while working as a doorman, Burt is approached by Will Smith's production company, which offered him a development deal on the condition that Will himself had to give it a thumbs up. As the story goes, he meets Will 1 week later at a recording studio where Will was recording an album, and Burt managed to impress him so much that Will invited him to a private screening of American Pie. Notably, whenever Burt recalls this story nowadays, he makes sure to talk about how he had been afraid he would get SA'd on this meeting and how he'd been mentally preparing for it all day, although he goes on to clarify no such thing actually happened.
And I call my dad and he goes, how did it go? I said, great. He's like, really? I said, yeah, we're going to the movies. My dad's like, on a date? And I go, no, like, just, we're going to the movies. And he's like, what do you mean, just you and him? And I was like, yeah. He's like, where? I said, Planet Hollywood. And he goes, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. I said, what? And he goes, this is one of those casting couch things. I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, I think he wants to f you in the ass. I go, what are you talking about, Dad? And he goes, this is very popular in Hollywood. I said, what do I do, Dad? Do I not show up? He goes, oh, no, show up. He goes, look, buddy, each cash checks. And show up. And Will Smith goes, what do you want to drink? And I was like, a Long Island iced tea. And he was like, okay. He was like, you like shrimp? I was like, I love shrimp. He goes, get us the best seats. And so I go, okay. So I get us the 2 best seats in the movie theater, right? And we watch a movie.
Regardless of the specifics behind their meeting, which remain dubious at best, one thing we can say is that the meeting seemed like it was a major success for Burt, as less than 5 months after this meeting, the production company would purportedly offer him his own sitcom. We don't know exactly how this manifested, as the sitcom doesn't seem to have ever been released, but Burt would eventually get his chance to star in a large production when he got a role in a CBS pilot for Life with David J. in 2001. Not much is actually known about the pilot, and even Burt only ever seems to mention it in passing, but on IMDb it is described as a failure. Around the same year, Burt got an interesting opportunity when he got to host The X Show, which is perhaps even more nebulous than the prior pilot, as there's very little you can find about it online, other than that it lasted around 2 years and it included some very raunchy programming. Burt's so far unimpressive career would eventually take a turn for the better, however, as in 2004, after playing a very minor role in a TV show called The Shield, as well as performing stand-up alongside 4 other comedians on National Lampoon Live, New Faces Volume 2, he finally got his first break when he became the star of a made-for-TV movie called Hurt Burt, which would hit people's airwaves in 2005. The movie was quite simple. Supposedly inspired by a short skit on the X show of the same name, the movie featured a number of clips of Burt performing all kinds of potentially dangerous stunts. It had everything from wrestling a very, very compliant and potentially slightly sedated black bear, to getting in the ring with a very angry bull, and even getting his butt waxed. This made-for-TV movie, which was seemingly somewhat successful for what it was, had never really garnered a ton of attention, and it sports a rather paltry 6.2 across its 24 reviews, with the only existing written review providing nothing but a brief synopsis and adding it was entertaining for what it was. In 2008, Burt would get another very unique opportunity when he was recruited to star side by side with the likes of Theo Von in the short-lived reality TV show Reality Bites Back. For the uninitiated, Reality Bites Back was a spoof on the kind of competitive reality TV shows that were huge around that time. Contestants would meet every week to perform all kinds of different zany challenges. But truly, the challenges were not meant to decide the winners. Instead, the primary function was for them to serve as vehicles for the comedians to make the audience laugh. Those found to be the least amusing were the ones who would get kicked out soonest. Burt starred in 5 of the eventual 8 episodes of this show, losing the contest in the 5th. While episodes are hard to come by, what's believed to be Burt's last stint in the show is available online. As you can see, his performance is not what you'd call highbrow comedy, and in fact, it's not far out of line from what people had found amusing about him from the beginning. Even from his college days, one of the most notable things about him was his overt exhibitionism for the sake of comedy. As mentioned, Burt didn't get that far, rather notably being beaten out by even Amy Schumer and having teetered on being dropped even since the last episode. Even though his tenure at Reality Bites Back was not exactly a glowing achievement, Burt continued on his path to fame unabated, and in 2009 he managed to land his own comedy special on Comedy Central called Comfortably Dumb.
My navigation system took me through Compton. Yeah, apparently it doesn't listen to the music I play inside it. And I didn't know until it was too late. It was like, take a right on Crenshaw Boulevard and punch it. I'm like, what? Do not stop at red lights. Lock your doors. Roll up your windows. Go, 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 go. All right, let's talk about black people. Here we go.
This would be his first, and for a long time, only comedy special. Though not the first available online video of his comedy routine, it does illustrate the kind of humor he generally employs during his stand-ups, using his knack for storytelling in a way not too dissimilar from, say, someone like Theo Vaughn, although their humor and phrasing is definitely different. Only a year later, on June 16, 2010, the Travel Channel would premiere a brand new show with Bert as a star called Bert the Conqueror. The premise of this show would center around Bert traveling the country, and as the blurb on Rotten Tomatoes says, celebrating local culture at its most adventurous, and experiencing the traditions that make each city and town unique. In reality, the show is mostly focused on taking advantage of Bert's self-admitted fear of heights and his knack for overreacting, as he would be brought on roller coasters, base jumps, human slingshots, and all other kinds of thrill rides.
This summer, Bert the Conqueror.
Are you ready? Okay.
He's conquering the country.
Oh God. Is this the right way?
For what it was, the show was a better outing than Hurt Bert, as it managed to get renewed for a second season, after which it seems to have been canceled. At some point during the 2000s, Bert started working for a popular comedian named Jay Moore, specifically working as his opening act. While not much is really known about this relationship, Bert himself talks about it quite candidly, and from his description, it wasn't exactly peachy. On an episode of Tiger Belly, he spoke about how Jay Moore treated him less as a partner and more like an employee, even going as far as to clarify to Bert that that's all he was. In fact, later down the line, he would even claim that Jay had slapped him over the face for supposedly talking disrespectfully to his wife, only to apologize for it later.
And his wife said something about getting an episiotomy. I didn't know what that was at the time. And he said, that's funny, Mike's so big, she had to get an episiotomy before having sex with me. And I didn't know what an episiotomy was. And I said, what's an episiotomy? And she whispered it in my ear. And I started laughing, and I was like, shut the fuck up, that happened to you? And she was like, yeah. And he just smacked me. He was like, don't you ever talk to my wife like that. I was like, what?
At some point during their working relationship, Bert describes telling Jay a story that had allegedly happened to him involving the comedian Tracy Morgan, after which Jay asked to use the story in his own stand-up since he had a much better impression of Tracy Morgan. The story itself goes something like this. Back in the day when Bert still worked the door at the Boston Comedy Club, a very popular comedian by the name of Tracy Morgan is invited to do a stand-up on stage. At some point after his stand-up is done, he and Bert manage to go off into a back alley, and Tracy hands him a joint, which, after Bert takes a drag, Tracy claims is actually PCP. Panicked, he goes back inside and talks to one of the older comedians there, saying that Tracy had just given him PCP, at which point the comedian assured him that Tracy didn't do PCP and had probably just gotten him some green stank. Still, the comedian recommended he stay with the rest of the group for the night. Once everyone was done with their comedy sets, they gathered up and went to what Bert describes as a railroad bar. There, Tracy goes all out on ordering everyone in the club expensive champagne. This goes on for the whole night, and Tracy racks up a bill in excess of $4,000. Eventually, the waitress comes along to hand over the bill, and with Bert Kreischer being the only white guy in the group, she hands it to him for some reason. This leads to an outburst from Tracy, who accuses the waitress of racism while making it very clear he would be the one to pay the bill. In anger, he flips over the table where Bert and the rest of the comedians have been sitting, at which point he is approached by the bouncer. Then a massive fight breaks out, during which Bert, still apparently on PCP and unsure if what was happening was even real, went outside to get some fresh air. After a couple of minutes, during which people kept flooding out of the bar, Bert sees multiple bouncers carrying Tracy Morgan, and they hurl him down the stairs and out of the club entirely, throwing him his shirt as he went, which he had apparently taken off during his champagne pouring spree. The story concludes with Tracy Morgan exclaiming, "Now that's how you get out of paying a check." While the veracity of this story is very, very up in the air, and I'd even go as far as to say it's likely made up, Jay ended up using it in multiple stand-ups. As far as we understand, he always credited the whole story to Bert pretty much the time he said it. However, it seems that at some point, Jay Moore decided it would be easier to just omit the part where it happened to Bert, and he began telling the story as if it happened to him. The first time, as far as we know, was on the Opie and Anthony show, and an episode aired on the 16th of March, 2009. In the immediate aftermath, it doesn't really seem Bert actually did much about this, as he and Jay continued to work together for a good bit after. Throughout, Jay continued to tell the story as if it was his own. In 2011, Bert starred as a guest in a comedy show called Master Debaters with Jay Moore, specifically in the 8th episode. It was a relatively standard comedy affair, wherein the host and the guest would discuss a number of lighthearted topics as vehicles to make as many jokes as possible. The show overall ended up being a flop though, and recordings of it are difficult to come by. While there wasn't much drama around the story of Jay stealing a story back in 2009, this would not be the case forever. In 2011, when Bert first made an appearance on JRE, he told the Tracy Morgan story, wherein he clarified that Jay told the story in his stand-ups and that he was okay with that arrangement, further clarifying Jay didn't really use the story much anymore. Here, though, he does take full ownership of this story, and once again, expresses he didn't really care that Jay was using it. At this point, Jay and Bert apparently had a bit of a falling out, though. In an episode of Podcast 1, Jay says how he's quite angry with Bert because him telling the story publicly now gave more ammunition to people who accused him of stealing other jokes. He then claims that telling the stories if it happened to him was something he asked Bert for permission for before doing it. Later on, during another JRE episode, Joe asked Bert about the whole situation. In it, Bert goes deeper into his own feelings on the situation, and for the most part, he's actually quite forgiving towards Jay for stealing the bit. Throughout, he puts much of the blame on himself for not actually standing up for himself when he initially told it. Joe Rogan himself speaks out in ardent support of Bert, finding Jay's actions to be quite detestable, and said that it constitutes stealing, to which Bert never outright says anything to contradict him. And keep in mind, Joe Rogan has a specific hatred of joke thieves, exhibited by him calling out Carlos Mencia, which ended up getting him dropped from his agency. Combined with the impassioned support of Joe Rogan, Bert came out of this far, far better than Jay, and if anything, the whole stealing of Bert's story likely hurt Jay's career. He would later go on WTF with Mark Maron, where he was asked about the situation by Mark. Jay clarifies that he's practically never even spoken to Joe, and that he and Bert were no longer friends at that point due to the whole drama. He goes on to describe a slightly different story to what Bert had described, firstly saying that Bert had insisted on Jay telling the story. In fact, after the success it finds, Bert apparently insisted that he keep telling the story on every subsequent show they do together. He then continues to use this bit, and as time goes on, he says that after Bert had insisted so much on him saying it, Jay begins to think the story would just sound better if he simply started telling it as if it were his own story. He clarifies that he regrets doing so, alleging there were only 2 instances of him doing it. He says he's disappointed that Bert didn't really try to defend him from Joe's barrage of insults and stealing accusations, apparently messaging Joe after the podcast to defend himself. While this didn't tank Jay's career, Bert definitely came out the victor, as the boost in popularity given to him by Joe Rogan ended up setting the stage for the next 10 years of his work. And years later, on the Tiger Belly podcast, he continued to recall this story in pretty much the same way. As we've shown, Bert has always had a bit of a knack for storytelling, and this is perhaps best exemplified from his early podcast with Joe Rogan. I've shown you a little bit from them already, but let's dial it back in and narrow our focus on his very first podcast appearance. As we've mentioned, Bert made his first documented appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience back when it was only just in its infancy, appearing all the way back on episode 73 in 2011. The appearance ended up being a success for Bert, so much so that he would go on to become a regular. It also becomes a demonstration of another aspect of Bert Kreischer, which will only become more prominent as time goes on. One of the stories he tells during this show is of a stand-up he had done, during which, allegedly, 3 black men had come out on stage and whipped out their manhood one by one to the amusement of everyone in the audience.
One dude gets up on stage halfway through my set, and he's like, "This is a real motherfucker. He's keeping it real talk right now. Real talk. You know what real motherfuckers getting the 305?" And he drops his pants and shows his place goes bananas, right? They're like, oh, and it's a...
5 5 to go.
The biggest, blackest, it's almost purple, it's so black.
The chances of this story actually being true are next to none, and it's hard to say for sure why he even felt the need to share it, considering that despite it sounding amusing, it doesn't really have much of a punchline. It's just like 3 black dicks. While not the first story of its type told by Bert, it is perhaps one of the first clear examples in recent history of something that Bert has probably entirely made up for no discernible reason other than to impress the terminally weed-stricken Joe Rogan. Aside from that, perhaps more importantly, in this first episode, Bert alludes to what would later become by far his most popular bit to date, the machine. The first time Bert had ever told this story was all the way back in 2006 on an episode of Loveline. As he explains it, in 1995 he was on a school trip to Russia, which had been facilitated by 2 Russian gangsters who had been hired by the school in order to ensure the students' safety. During the trip, the students were not supposed to ever actually speak to these 2 mobsters, whom Bert named Sasha and Igor. But with Bert being Bert, instead of following the advice, he knocks on their door and attempts to talk to them. He tries to introduce himself, but instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Bert," which is what he'd meant to say, he said, "Hi, I'm the Machine." Becoming fast friends with the 2 mobsters, he ends up getting up to all kinds of wacky hijinks during his stay in Russia, like driving in a cop car. Eventually, this all culminates in the school group hopping on a train back to Moscow, during which Bert, due to his 2 mobster friends, gets involved in a train robbery wherein the 2 gangsters robbed a few train carriages. When they stopped in Moscow to be interrogated by the cops, the police allegedly recognized Bert as the Machine and took him into a station, at which point they spent the night partying. It goes without saying that this story is 1000% made up. It just never happened. Strangely though, if you try to research this online, you will find a couple of testimonies to the fact that at least some of it may be real. For one, he does seem to have actually gone to Russia for a trip, and there does appear to be some sort of incident during a train ride that he was on. But regardless of how much of it is actually true, Bert would end up telling this story in full on the next episode of the Joe Rogan Experience that he was a part of, where he pretty much recalls it in the same way he had on all the occasions prior. Joe in particular took to the story, and it seems he encouraged Bert to try and share it during a stand-up, to which Bert objected, at least at first. More so, Joe Rogan took such a liking to Bert that he made him part of his so-called Death Squad, a quasi-comedy group comprised of some of Joe Rogan's comedian friends, including Brian Redband, Tom Segura, Aaron Kleiber, Tony Hinchcliffe, and more importantly to us, Bert Kreischer himself. Likely seeing the success he had with the first few episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience, and further spurred on by encouragement from Joe himself, Bert set out to make a podcast of his own. He constructed what he calls a $100,000 man cave, built primarily to be used for his podcasts, which he wasted no time in getting underway. He titled it Bertcast. According to IMDb, the first episode of this podcast premiered on December 5th, 2012. While the first 300 episodes are not available on YouTube, they are on Spotify, including the first one. The podcast was and still remains a pretty standard affair. You have Bert talking into the microphone about pretty much anything that comes to his mind, pop culture, recent life experiences, and then he has different guests that come on to take up the slack every time. In the first episode, it was his dad, and in later episodes it could be anyone from family to other comedians. While analytics are hard to come by on a podcast this old, it seems Bert found some moderate success with the show as he continued to upload episodes unabated for years on end. All the while, he continued to show up on JRE as well as other comedian shows, where he continued to tell his wacky and often unbelievable stories to then funnel the attention from those shows to his own. For the most part, there aren't a ton of notable things to talk about here, other than Bert's tendency to share more of the baffling stories in other podcasts, including knowing 2 kids without tongues growing up, and also seeing a kid be struck by lightning. The strange thing about most of these cases is that they didn't really seem they were intended to get people to laugh, per se, as he said them in an entirely straightforward manner, and unlike the bear wrestling story or the bull story, there's simply no way to prove them. Perhaps the most perplexing story he shared about his life was about when he had been a frontman in his high school band. He alleges that he had been approached by Mark Tremonti, who wanted to join his band, but he was just so good that Bert couldn't allow him to be in the band, at which point Mark left to form Creed, which if you don't know is a multi-platinum rock band, which found worldwide success in the late 90s and early 2000s. More so than any of the prior stories, this is perhaps the best example of stories Bert tells that many people view as one-up stories, or stories meant to one-up everyone else's stories. Like when you tell your buddy you had a horse growing up, and your buddy tells you he had 2 purebred Arabian stallions that he could also ride simultaneously, while playing his Game Boy Advance. Regardless, there was clearly an audience for these stories, and podcasts such as JRE seem to be eating them up by the dozens. Joe, being famously rather trusting of people he sees as friends, never really seemed to question any of Bert's stories to any degree. Bert continued to find success both in the podcasting scene and the stand-up comedy route. However, the successes were not exactly anything major compared to what he would would achieve later in life, which at the time, he had his own podcast, which got modest views, and he did pretty well on JRE, but fundamentally, he didn't have much of a leg to stand on his own, even in terms of his stand-ups. Besides this, he also got a gig as host for the show Trip Flip. The premise of the show was that he would walk up to random strangers on the street and offer them an all-inclusive vacation for free. Most people would refuse, probably thinking it was some sort of ruse to get them somewhere private and harvest their kidneys. The show ended up being quite successful for what it was, getting renewed for 3 seasons before being canceled for unknown reasons. In 2014, Burt wrote and released a book called Life of the Party: Stories of a Perpetual Man-Child. In it, he wrote about the innumerable amount of stories he had purportedly experienced, including being named the #1 partier in the US by Rolling Stone, the Tracy Morgan story, and perhaps more importantly for later, he once again retold the story of the Machine. Later in 2016, Burt got another opportunity to revise his role in Burt the Conqueror, with the show getting renewed for one last season. However, this would be the last thing Burt did with the company, as he ended his contract soon after. And as it turns out, this was the right choice. The same year, he would finally get his really big break in comedy when he started a Netflix special called simply The Machine. In it, he recalled in detail the story about his experience with Russian mobsters, which we've already broken down for you 3 times. Besides that story itself, which was the main focus of the whole special, the show also served to demonstrate many other qualities of Burt's stand-up. The most obvious of which, besides his storytelling knack, is the fact that he loves to do his stand-ups shirtless. In fact, while his early stand-ups were always done while regularly clothed, pretty much every stand-up he would do following the 2016 special was without a shirt on, to the amusement of everyone watching. The special ended up being a colossal success for Burt, becoming quite popular over its lifetime, with an average of 7 out of 10 on IMDb across over 2,000 reviews. But even more importantly, Burt was allowed to re-upload the clip of the stand-up to his YouTube channel, and he did so in December 2016. What he probably didn't expect is that this small decision ended up being perhaps his biggest claim to fame. The clip became a hit, steadily gaining more and more views, already nearing 1 million by March. This was many times more views than any of his other videos from the time, which were getting an average of about 30,000 views apiece. And the steady growth only continued as by September the video had almost 3 million. Now, as of today, the video sits at a staggering 54 million views, and it's by far the most viewed video on Burt's YouTube channel. To the YouTube algorithm, this is a timeless classic. The video's success directly translated to a massive bump for his whole channel. He went from having just around 20,000 subs in and around 2016 to suddenly having over 45,000 subs by February 2017, over 70,000 subscribers by June, and around 128,000 subs by the end of 2017. The channel had been around for over a decade by then, but within a year it grew almost tenfold. Perhaps more importantly for Burt at the time, however, the Netflix special was Burt's ticket to the mainstream, leading to another popular comedy special in 2018, as well as becoming the foot in the door for his Hollywood career. When you look at the early videos on Burt's YouTube channel, one kind of upload you'll see often is the sort of slice of life content you might see on vlog channels. These go all the way back to 2011, and as it happens, they're probably on the same level of quality as other YouTube vlogs from the time.
You tell me one comic you know that can do more of these than me.
Besides showing off his amazing push-up form, Burt had filmed a number of videos with his kids as well. That would change on October 10th, 2015 when Burt released his first official vlog video. You can tell there was a lot more thought put into the production aspect of this one, with proper editing and a decently high-quality camera. He would post these vlogs quite regularly at first, releasing a new one seemingly every couple of days, albeit without any real schedule in mind. In December, he released a vlog titled December Weigh-Ins and 3-Day Weight Loss Total, where he opened up a bit about his weight problems, showing his weight to be 255.8 pounds. The video then focuses on his attempts to shed this extra weight, and he shares his intention to lose around 40 pounds in 2016. Burt would keep up this goal for a while, eventually losing about 20 pounds, but after the last video, it seems he dropped that goal for the time being. Later that year, around November 2016, Burt released a short weigh-in video where he showed that he and Tom Segura had made a bet about who would lose more weight in 2 days. Whoever lost more weight would win the right to shave the other person's beard, which, as both of them made quite clear, was tantamount to murder for their jawlines. The whole event had been set up by Joe Rogan. Originally, it was intended to be a 3-day challenge, but for whatever reason, they shortened it to 2. This was obviously not nearly enough time for any meaningful weight loss, and the most they may have hoped to achieve was losing a bit of water weight. Regardless, both Burt and Tom weigh in on how much weight they would lose on each day of the challenge. On the first day, Burt apparently lost 6 pounds, and Tom managed to lose 8, going from 227 to 219. On the second day, Burt lost a further 1 pound and Tom lost 3. And as implied, Tom now had the right to shave off Burt's beard, which he took great delight in doing.
Burt, can I please see it? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. So you're doing the prince. Now.
Initially, the challenge's purpose had been to simply get both of them healthier, although it seems Bert was the one who Joe was more worried about. That said, it didn't seem like the challenge had really convinced Bert to change his lifestyle much, and given that he, Tom, and Joe were all quite close friends by that point, there's plenty of reason to believe that Bert's health was a matter of concern for all of them. And don't forget to add on top of that Bert's severe drinking problem, which had only compounded his health issues. Whether it was due to Joe's earnest concern for his friend's health or making an entertaining video, Joe would go on to create a sort of new tradition. In 2017, Joe, Bert, Tom, and another comedian by the name of Ari Shafir would get together. In order to support their friend, they would join Bert in spending the entire month of October without consuming any drugs or alcohol. The challenge then became known as Sober October, and we can assume that, initially, the focus was entirely on helping Bert. During this month, the four would also have to challenge themselves to do 15 hot yoga classes throughout the month. At the end of October, the four comedians would get together to discuss their experiences throughout the whole ordeal. The impression they gave was that the overall experience was actually quite positive, with Ari in particular having demonstrated quite a bit of talent for yoga. While the group didn't share any hard data on weight loss, Bert definitely appeared healthier, speaking to the effectiveness of the whole program. Within a few months, he has started a new podcast called Something's Burning, which, while being a typical show on the surface, also had the added layer of Bert cooking a meal for his guests during it. Besides this, he would also release another Netflix special called Secret Time, which, just like the first one, became quite popular with the general audience, netting him a respectable 7.3 on IMDb from over 2,000 reviews. The impression was that Bert would try to maintain this healthy lifestyle somewhat, and to his credit, he even ran a marathon in March. However, Bert alleges that the marathon ended up causing quite a lot of damage to his body, making him unable to exercise for a month and leading to him putting on 15 pounds. The weight problem didn't get any better, and throughout 2018 he continued to balloon, causing even further concern in his friend group. According to them, Bert had alleged that much of the weight was due to bloat from all the alcohol he had been consuming, which Tom Segura directly relates to Bert's comedy tour, referencing a common practice wherein Bert would always drink either prior to or during his stand-ups. Whatever the case, Bert's health was clearly taking a turn for the worst, which called for yet another intervention. In October 2018, Joe Rogan would organize yet another month of sobriety, renaming it to Sober October, presumably to make it less strictly about Bert. This time around, the rules would be slightly different than last time. Joe introduced a point system, wherein every time one of the contestants did something that elevated their heart rate to a higher percentage of their maximum heart rate for a given amount of time, they would get a certain amount of fitness points. The person with the most fitness points would be crowned winner and rewarded with a custom-made MMA-inspired champion belt. The introduction of a competitive angle ended up being quite effective, as everyone involved spent a lot more time on exercising, Bert included. While everyone did indeed put a lot of effort in, perhaps it shouldn't surprise anyone that Joe Rogan, a man who's been exercising non-stop for decades and who's the only one even approximating an athlete, won this challenge quite handily. As another year carried on, Bert did end up falling back into his old habits of not taking his health very seriously. Come October, the Joe Rogan crew would once again organize Sober October, although at this point it was clearly no longer for the benefit of Bert and had instead become a simple channel tradition, this time replacing the fitness point system with having to do at least 10 different courses, as well as read at least 500 pages worth of books. Interestingly, and perhaps somewhat worryingly, during the podcast where the third Sober October was being discussed and set up by Ari, he admitted to having spiked Bert's drink with MDMA. As the two described the story, Bert had been home with his wife and kids, and Ari had come around to visit. According to Ari, he was mad at Bert for getting him involved in Sober October, and as revenge, he decided to crack open an MDMA pill and pour out the contents into his drink. Notably, Bert seems quite uncomfortable the whole time the story is being recollected, and while Joe and Ari seem to take it in good humor, both Bert and Tom are clearly taking this quite seriously. Bert detailed how, as soon as he realized his drink had been spiked, he was having near constant panic attacks, not helped by the fact that he was supposed to go on tour the very next day. Among other things, Ari argued it wasn't a very big deal, partially because practically every time the moment October ended, Bert would go right back to drinking and living unhealthy anyway, meaning much of the point of Sober October was lost regardless. Oddly, this frankly terrifying story did not have much of an impact on anything. The Sober October continued unabated. More so, besides the stern talking to during the podcast episode by both Tom and Bert, which amounted to saying, "That's kind of a dick move," Ari got off completely scot-free. In fact, he would go on JRE twice in just the next 2 months, and the MDMA thing was never really addressed. Regardless, the round of Sober October went largely the same as the other two, with the 4 contestants committing to the bit admirably. A recap of it was done in an episode of JRE in December, where all 4 would weigh themselves and compare just how much weight they had lost, with Bert clocking in at 237 pounds. But the tradition of Sober October will be put on hold from this point on until 2022. As we've likely established at this point, Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura have been friends for quite a few years by now. They would often make appearances on each other's podcasts, with Tom appearing on Bertcast all the way back in episode 100 of Bertcast over 9 years ago by now. Fair to say they've been quite close, and their mutual involvement with Joe Rogan only gave them space to strengthen their mutual friendship further. By this point, fans were begging them for a more permanent collab, and in mid-2019, the two would finally oblige. The Two Bears, One Cave podcast released its first episode in June 2019. It was about as by the numbers as it could be, considering the two's other podcasts, but what neither of them may have expected is that it would arguably become their most popular piece of work. The first episode raked in a staggering 1.5 million views, and even once the initial hype died down, the weekly episodes continued getting anywhere from 700k to even 1 million views per podcast. While these numbers were pretty normal for the YMH channel at the time, and were at times even a bit lower than what the YMH podcast may have expected, it was still far more successful than Bert's own show, which would earn him maybe about 100,000 views on a good day. That said, Bert's Something Burning show was doing a lot better, with episodes from 2022 getting upwards of 3 million views, but we can't really be sure of it as Bert has removed all of the old episodes and then re-uploaded them after releasing the season 2. But considering comedians are always making new podcasts, this would of course not be the only new podcast Bert started in 2019, as later that year in October we saw the release of the first episode of Bill Bert Podcast. The show was a pretty standard affair for Bert Kreischer, as he pretty much does the same thing everywhere he goes, with the addition of smoking cigars. Bill, meanwhile, provides a relatively new perspective, being a lot less patient with Bert's antics than either Joe Rogan or Tom Segura. While the Bill Bert Podcast is no longer available on YouTube, save for re-uploads from diligent internet archivists, we can assume it must have done pretty well, as the show would go on to release 57 episodes. Both of these new podcasts show themselves to be quite successful, with both providing very, very different dynamics. While the Two Bears, One Cave podcast had Tom mostly giving room to Bert to spout off about whatever, which made for a very entertaining show, the main draw of the Bill Bert podcast was the fact that Bill would just lay into Bert for even the smallest thing, and Bert would just have to take it.
I get confused really easily in our fights. I have one fight. Yeah, I get really confused.
God bless your wife. I was just picturing the dumb look on your face. Can you imagine being married to someone who gets confused in arguments? Wait a minute, what was my point? And she stays with you? What a fucking angel you married.
It was with the release of episode 36 of Two Bears, One Cave that the way the show was run would change forever, and the most notable moment from that episode was a clip of Bert admitting on air that he drinks 1 gallon of Kool-Aid every day, while Tom laughs uncontrollably from sheer befuddlement. While the episode itself did quite well, getting around 2 million views, the clip of Bert drinking Kool-Aid netted him over 6, and his subsequent short would go on to get another 4. It was exactly at this moment that the podcast saw somewhat of a shift in focus. While the main draw remained the dynamic between the two comedians, the topics they would discuss would shift somewhat from general podcast topics to putting more focus on Bert specifically, highlighting his constant partying and making light of his prevailing drinking habit. The gamble paid off massively for the Two Bears, One Cave podcast, whose views had begun to taper off somewhat prior to the 36th episode, revitalizing the channel and putting them back on top. At this point, it's fair to say that Bert was beginning to hit the absolute peak of his success. All his stand-ups were regularly selling out, and he was even getting more work in Hollywood. He got another Netflix special in early 2020 called Hey Big Boy, which, much like his other comedy specials, seemed to be quite successful. Around mid-2020, Bert even got to meet one of his supposed idols, Adam Sandler. During this short interview, Bert pretty much behaved as you would expect him to, telling some rather unlikely stories, presumably in an attempt to impress, sucking up to Adam and constantly dropping compliments, all while the seasoned actor just sits there and nods along politely, looking beyond desperate to just put a stop to it. As it turns out, the stop came very quickly, as only 5 minutes into that interview, Bert asked him a question so silly that Adam just couldn't stand it anymore, and he called it quits right then and there.
What movie was the funnest to shoot that you would shoot every single day for the rest of your life? Go ahead.
No answer for that. I got no idea. I never thought about that. I never will. And I hated that question. No, you ruined it, man. I don't ever want to see you again.
A rather embarrassing outcome for Bert, no doubt, but really, it wasn't even the most embarrassing thing to have happened to him that year, as you'll soon see. In October 2020, Netflix would release a brand new comedy TV show starring Bert as its main lead, titled The Cabin with Bert Kreischer. The premise of the series is that Bert is moving into the mountains with the intention of detoxing, although the actual contents of the show are more about the supposed comedic hijinks that he and his guests get up to, all the while smoking cigars and consuming copious amounts of alcohol. While a number of the guests he invites on are his friends from the comedy world, some of the choices of guests are very confusing. In the second episode, for example, they invite Caitlyn Jenner, of all people, who's about as involved with Bert Kreischer as the bear in Act 1 of this script. The show is sort of supposed to be a mock reality show, with a number of scripted moments that are supposed to come off as real. At the end of each episode, there are calls Bert makes to his wife, Leanne, in which Leanne must feign complete ignorance to the fact that Bert is actually making a TV show on the supposed detox tour. Of course, the problem is that pretty much all of these calls are hideously fake, and they don't do a very good job of pretending that they're not.
I feel perfect right now. I feel absolutely perfect. I feel like a monk.
So, have you learned anything? Enlighten me.
Well, the Superman of Cuba had an 18-inch cold, and he's smarter than Brando.
Okay, well, good night, babe.
The show's humor is undeniably edgy and crass, and while that's pretty standard for most of Bert's comedy, the only real part of his routine that's present in this show is his unapologetic exhibitionism and slapstick comedy, harkening back to the days of Hurt Bert. The show found some success with Bert's diehard fans, but otherwise it was panned across the board. The show had some truly baffling choices in terms of filmmaking, and frankly, even just plain comedy. It ended up flying under the radar compared to Bert's other much more successful ventures, and even the trailer for his show, which came out on Netflix's official channel, only garnered around 700,000 views, which for a Netflix show seems pretty low. The show's reception was not the only mark on Bert's record, as about 8 months later, in June, the last episode of the Bill Burt podcast was released, after which Bill unceremoniously ended it. While the specifics on why exactly Bill had left are unclear, there are certain assumptions we can make. On an episode of the Dan Lee Batard show, Burt explained that the reason Bill had left the show is because he had been having a little grill party, and having to do the episode with an additional guest left him blindsided. Burt alleges that the podcast was pretty much the second to last time he had ever spoken to him, despite them having been good friends for over 20 years. So, this spelt the end of the Bill Burt podcast, but this was hardly a problem for Burt, whose successes only continued to mount as time went on, and the show with Tom Segura continued to thrive in a way that not a ton of comedian podcasts do. However, even the Two Bears, One Cave show wasn't quite what it had used to be. Around 2021, there came yet another change in programming, when Tim and Burt would individually invite guests on the show, foregoing the other hosts entirely. Burt, in particular, ended up filming 3 episodes in a row with just him and the other guests, with Tom nowhere in sight. Conversely, excluding Burt also became somewhat common, as Tom would share the floor with whatever guest came on that day, from Tim Dillon to Brendan Schaub to whoever else you could think of, really. But it was also around this time that Burt started to personally catch some negative flack on the YouTube side of things. In prior years, Burt's friendly nature and extensive connections with other comedians kept him fairly safe from criticism. But as 2020 rolled into 2021, this spotless record would become somewhat tainted. While it's hard to say where and when exactly all this started, there are a few potential places we can point to. The first major takedown of Burt was released on the 11th of September 2021 by a YouTuber called Porcelain. The video is over an hour long and detailed the entire story of Burt up until that point, with a very heavy negative slant, calling him a deeply unfunny and untalented slob whose biggest claim to fame was his ability to mooch success off of other people. The video got around 800,000 views, which is a lot more than any other video on his channel. While it got a lot of dislikes, there were also a lot of supportive comments who have been feeling the same way. Some other negative videos followed in the immediate aftermath, including a review of The Cabin with Burt Kreischer by Speaking of Funny, another relatively small YouTube channel. He calls out the show on being poorly put together, from the jokes to the premise, as well as giving more in-depth critiques of each episode, breaking down in short why they just don't work. He also accuses Burt of only inviting some of the bigger names like Caitlyn Jenner for the sake of gaining a larger following for himself. He then posits that the only reason the show was made was for Burt to pocket most of the production money and split it with his friends. The video did well for itself, earning around 250,000 views over its lifetime, and with the comments being generally supportive. While both of these videos did very well for what they were, they did little harm to Burt's reputation. They did very little harm to Burt's actual reputation. The hype around him only continued to blossom, and while Two Bears, One Cave was not the juggernaut it had been before, it was still a very popular show. Add to that his stand-up and his involvement with multiple Hollywood productions, and there really wasn't much cause for Burt to worry at the time. This rather tepid state of affairs would continue into 2022, with Burt continuing to find success in his own way, getting on podcasts like Joe Rogan, and steadily appearing on Two Bears, One Cave, as well as continuing to do Burtcast and Something's Burning. But even then, he was not entirely without controversy. Around mid-22, on an episode of Burtcast, Burt interviews fellow comedian Stavros Halkias of Cumtown fame, and during it, he makes a truly baffling comment, drawing a clear distinction between the brains of comedians and so-called pedestrians, to which the most athletic Greek comedian of all time replies by laughing hysterically.
A comic's brain is so different than a pedestrian's brain, and like what, you know, like I can't help. I went
Pedestrian is so funny, by the way.
Oh,
like saying that.
The moment earned the whole episode nearly 4,000 dislikes to 13,000 likes, a far worse ratio than Burt usually gets to enjoy, and the moment was even clipped and re-uploaded to YouTube in the form of shorts. Of course, this didn't really affect much in the grand scheme of things, but what it did do is highlight something about Burt that many have never even noticed: his inflated sense of ego. Although only a small thing at first, this train of thought that saw Burt as a bit of a narcissist began to slowly gain steam as the year wore on. In September, Burt made a guest appearance on This Past Weekend, where he spoke opposite of Theo Von, as it's not uncommon for Theo Joe to discuss addiction, and he asks Bert if he's an alcoholic, to which Bert emphatically says he's not an alcoholic, despite getting severely drunk almost daily, and giving himself such life goals as not drinking while on a private plane. Given that there would have been fewer Bert fans watching this episode, it's perhaps unsurprising that most of the comments under this clip speak quite negatively of him, pitying Bert about his obvious state of denial, while others mock him for it wholesale. The call-outs would continue throughout the year, as Joe would stage yet another intervention of poor old Bert, who at this point hardly seemed to understand that the whole reason Sober October even started was to help him with his drinking problem, and would instead receive it as just another fun thing to do with the boys. These October streams would lead to perhaps the first time Joe ever actually really called out Bert for much of anything, and it's not that difficult to see why. During the Sober October 4 stream, where they announced the beginning of the challenge, Bert kept making some truly baffling claims. For example, he insisted he believed himself to look a lot more in shape, despite clearly being borderline obese. He also made a wild claim that as a 50-year-old man with the flexibility of a plane of glass, he could probably do the splits. Whether due to wounded pride for actually being in shape and being capable of doing a split, or just being generally annoyed at Bert for constantly claiming to be better at things than he ever realistically could be, Joe called him out, giving him a bit of a reality check about both his health, his physical look, and the likelihood he could ever do a split in his life.
Yeah, like
And
this
then
is like when you go like, I have legit the best shoulders.
I do. Hold on, I do. I have legit great shoulders. Like great shoulders. Yeah.
No, you don't.
Joe, they're ripping through this shirt right now.
Yeah, but you say
No, you
things
just
and you
bought
don't
a
really
boy's
mean
shirt.
it, right? Like
No, I
when you
kinda mean
say
it. I
things
kinda
and you
mean
know
it.
they're
I
not
kinda
true.
I
He
kinda
does
mean it.
He's
I kinda
kind
mean
of
it.
and
I
I
kinda
kind of
mean it.
which
Right.
means he means. But
I
you
joking,
say
not joking.
but you say things you know aren't true. Like remember that one time you said he could do the splits? You were like,
He thought he could. I actually thought I might be able to pull one out.
This wasn't much, mind you, but it was the start of something larger, something that went even beyond the Joe Rogan experience and into the larger YouTube space. Joe would call him out slightly on a later podcast during a segment where they discussed Garth Brooks, and the topic of discussion switched to if Tom Segura would be willing to stop trolling him if Garth went on a podcast with him. Perplexingly, Bert went on a bit of a tirade, trying to make it as clear as possible that Garth Brooks would never go on a podcast with Tom, even interrupting him and Joe to get that point across. Joe tells him to shut the flip up for a second, and while Bert is temporarily convinced to shush, he still barges in to comment that Garth would probably benefit more from going on his Bertcast, which, personally, I dare say is almost guaranteed to be untrue, given the sheer disparity in viewership between YMH and Bertcast at the time. The callouts would continue all the way up until the end of Sober October, when the quartet got together for a recap. The episode starts with all of them taking a supposedly well-deserved drink of a 20-year-old scotch, and of all the people sitting there, it's pretty clear who takes the most pleasure in having a sip of alcohol.
All right, here it is. Cheers.
I haven't had any.
Cheers. No alcohol to now.
31 days.
Gentlemen, we did it. Yes. To all you out there, too, did it with us. Salud.
Cheers. Cheers. Oh, baby, let's see what you're...
Ooh, that's good scotch. That's 21-year-old Glenlivet. Very nice.
Downing his drink in one gulp, Bert finds himself asking for another shot almost immediately afterwards, to the chagrin of everyone else sitting around the table. Tom is the first to call him out here, pointing out that Bert takes a lot more pleasure in drinking alcohol than anyone else in the room. He goes on to say that, in his view, drinking copious amounts of alcohol has become part of Bert's whole identity. Bert gets immediately defensive about this, going on to say things like, "My identity is drinking the same way as an identity for any other guy," or "My identity is living life." Both of these statements lead to jeers from the host and the rest of the guests, who don't really seem to be taking these statements with even a modicum of respect. Notably, Bert gets quite snappy after this, randomly throwing in insults and just not looking like he's having a good time. In the end, it seems Bert is rather content to have this be the last episode of Sober October on record, and as of today, long after the end of October 2023, it appears that this truly was the end of the multi-year tradition. The tail end of 2022 going into 2023 would not treat Bert any better. For the first time, perhaps, since his appearance in the world of show business, there's grown a large population of people who genuinely just don't like Bert. This wasn't necessarily due to one big thing, one massive blunder that caused everyone to turn against him. Instead, it's been a slow, steady decline with mounting podcast appearances where he's called out for something minor, his comedian friends commenting negatively about him, and just people growing tired of his arguably quite samey style of content. It's now gotten to the point where even his Reddit page is mostly full of people actively rallying against him, either pointing out how annoying he was during his podcast appearances, sharing negative videos about him, or alleging that his so-called mystery bag is a scam. And on the note of those videos, 2023 was the year when they really began to hit their stride. Channels like Comedy Enforcement and Too Lazy to Try, both commentary channels focused mainly on news in the world of comedy and podcasting, started pushing out a lot of videos talking about Bert, consistently keeping him in the cycle. With these videos and many others like them, Bert's standing in the community grew even worse, and it seemed there was no end to things people could theoretically make videos of. In late 2022,